Good evening and welcome to tonight's special meeting of the Lower Makefield Township Board of Supervisors. I am your chair, James McCartney. I ask that we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, let's do a quick roll call. Supervisor Weiss.
Here.
Supervisor Blundy.
Here.
Supervisor Grenier.
Here.
And Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Excellent. Next up on the agenda is item number 4. So it's consideration to authorize Obermeyer, Redmond, Maxwell, Hippel to create an irrevocable trust document. I believe at the last supervisor meeting, we discussed kind of the direction that we wanted to go with the sewer proceeds. And this takes us right up to the how it is that we're going to frame this trust and partnering up with Obermeyer to help us through this process. So at this point, I will open it up to any supervisor questions or discussions.
So moved.
I'll second.
So motion made by Supervisor Blundy, seconded by Supervisor Weiss. And do we have any?
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, sir.
What's the proposed rate for the services of the attorney from Obermeyer, Redmond, Maxwell, Hippel, LLP?
Give me 1 second. I apologize, John. I did have this data up, and I know Kurt had this data, but unfortunately he had to leave. So let me just make sure that I have it here.
James, is it in the memo that Kurt sent us?
It is, yeah, I think so. A blended hourly rate of $395. Anticipated total budget to complete the trust would be between $25,000 and $30,000.
So what's our current hourly rate for our township solicitor?
Probably, Barbara, you would know that, but I'm thinking 150. Is that right?
I believe it is 150 for general representation work. Yes.
Correct. Yeah. So it's 150, John.
So, were we not happy with the work that Hill Wallach did outlining the trust previously that I'm not aware of?
I wasn't personally unhappy with the work that Hill Wallach was doing. I think that Hill Wallach was giving us a 10,000 feet above the earth kind of view of what this was and what it meant. I think that Obermeyer is more well-equipped. They have way more experience in this. They also have some other professionals that they can rely on. And I think when we're talking about a trust that's going to be in place, whether it's irrevocable, how irrevocable it's going to be, I think that it's probably best that we put, the best. So
has the attorney in question drafted similar trusts in other municipalities in Pennsylvania?
I believe they have. I'm not 100% sure. But that would be.
Do we know which ones?
Well, that would be a question you would ask him.
Okay. The reason I asked the question is, if a township passes an ordinance and it's in their code book, it's not copyrighted. So another lawyer could use that language, much in the same way other municipalities have used the language in a lot of our ordinances over the years. So that's why I'm asking some of the questions.
Yes. And I think the biggest hurdle with this, John, to be honest with you, is that we are going into some uncharted waters when it comes to how irrevocable trusts from a municipal standpoint are set up, how they're operated. So I think that this is going to be a complex type of assignment. It's not going to be something that's going to be cut and dry where we can just copy and paste what other towns have done.
I'm not sure that that's the case. I will say that people have come to me and said they've had great experiences developing trust with Hill Wallach. Now, again, that's not Solicitor Truelove, who Barbara, is he on vacation this week or something?
He had a conflict this evening, so
Okay.
as at a different meeting, but I can tell you, we do have other attorneys in the firm that are well versed in drafting irrevocable trusts for, I believe, both individuals as well as corporations.
Yeah. And has Obermeyer, are they the solicitor of any township in Bucks County?
Not that I'm aware of. You might know the answer to that, though.
Or no.
I don't know of any offhand.
Okay. So I'm still a little flummoxed here. We have an existing township solicitor whose rate is less than half of the proposed rate of the firm that's been suggested here. Am I correct? For a
Yep.
task that the actual solicitor's firm is a specialist in.
Well, I don't know if they're a specialist. Barbara, how many irrevocable municipal trusts have you written?
I have not specifically written any.
How many people in your firm have written them?
Oh my God, at least 2, 3 on this side of the pond. And we have a full-blown group on the other side of the pond.
Barbara, the question was very specific. Irrevocable trust for townships.
And I don't know that. I can't answer that question off the top of my head.
And I think that it's based on, the feedback that we got from Dave was none.
Correct.
Right? The feedback that I've gotten, the feeling that I got from Dave is none.
James, may I ask you a question?
Exploratory memo was, the way it was.
Sure, Dan, go ahead.
The way we're going, I don't know if this will jive with folks' thoughts processes, but it sounds like there's some level of uncertainty with what our solicitor can do. What I'd like to see happen, because this may be a specialist thing that we may need to go outside and pay a little more for another firm, but I would like to give our current solicitor, because it sounds like they do have some pretty strong capabilities here, give them an opportunity to provide us a proposal to do the same work so that we can compare apples to apples as best we can. Because what we have from Obermeyer's, a couple paragraphs saying we'll do this for this many hours, this for that many, approximately this many hours, approximately that many hours, and it's going to cost you $30K or whatever it is for nearly $400 an hour. It's not really, in my mind, that's not really a proposal. That's just a basic outline with some hours. I'd like to see both of them give us a little bit better proposal as to what that means. At the same time, we talked about setting up a trust, and that's what we all want to do. But we're still talking about whittling away at the total dollar volume. And I want to make sure that we're not whittling so much away that the idea of a trust suddenly becomes not as meaningful, let's say. I don't want to go too far with that, but I would like our current solicitor to have an opportunity to give us a proposal to see if we can't save, if we can save 50% on this or more to do the same thing. I would obviously want to do that if we get the same product. But I don't know that because we don't have anything from them, and I don't know why we went with Obermeyer. I wasn't entirely impressed with their work on the sewer sale from what I've read that they've written. So I have some hesitation just working with Obermeyer going forward, let alone the fact that they're more than double what our current solicitor is, who may or may not have the same capabilities or maybe even better.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I hasten to interrupt. There's a member of the public who would wish to comment on this particular issue. Would you find it acceptable if they came to the podium?
Yeah, I just want to make sure there's no other supervisor comments before that.
I'm not finished, but I figured.
Sure. I would wait until all supervisor comments.
Okay. So in general, I don't understand why we would spend more than 2.5 times on the hourly rate of our current township solicitor, unless the majority has somehow thought that that they don't trust the solicitor or is not happy with the firm. If that's the case, you should have shared that with us, but in most cases, the township solicitor is the one who would draft your ordinance. Not all cases, grant you, but it's one of those situations where this is an ideal circumstance where the township solicitor would do that. And given that his rate or her rate, because we have Barbara here, is less than half, I'm having a hard time understanding why taxpayers should pay for double the price, more than double the price. I mean, there's a lot of inflation, don't get me wrong, but there hasn't been a compelling case made as to why. That's why this firm and what specific skills they have as well. So I'm a very strong no. Like Supervisor Grenier, I will say that the attorney from Obermeyer is a tenacious, detail-oriented advocate for his client. I mean, he did a tremendous job of narrowly threading a needle where he correctly assessed that the township could have accepted a much better bid for the sewer sale. However, put the seeds of doubt in the supervisors that wanted to do that. So my question really is, he's a great advocate, but who's his client? Because it wasn't the residents of Lower Makefield. It was perhaps, I don't know, Aqua, who has done, Dan, how many deals, Supervisor Grenier, how many deals? I mean, it's 9?
Something like that, yes.
So I have a hard time with that. Now, I know I'm supposed to not mention anything about the sewer sale or the fact that ratepayers are going to get gouged, just crushed when the PUC rates come out. And the folks that are architecting that aren't necessarily the ones that are going to be there to protect us going forward. So I'm more comfortable with our township solicitor drafting the proposed ordinance at less than half the price than I would be with Obermeyer, Redmond and Maxwell, Ipple, LLP. And by the way, no disrespect for those folks. They invite me to happy hours all the time. I've never gone. So they seem to like me because they send me email after email. Come to our happy hour in Doylestown. If maybe they spent a little less on happy hours, they could lower the rates and they might be a better choice for us, but I don't see it at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any other supervisor comments? Yes, Fred.
I have utmost respect and confidence in our solicitors for the municipal work that they've done for us over the past few years, and I have no doubt they'll continue for many more. However, to engage into a municipal trust document to protect a large sum of money for the taxpayers of this township is a different story. It's relatively new science, and even though there are some ordinances and some trusts formed by ordinances, it may not be the way that this township will end up going. And with the number of specialists that Obermeyer has and their in-depth experience in protecting money for municipalities, the financial trust, they're doing one now in Delaware County. I think it would be worth the extra money to have these specialists give us the proper instrument to protect our citizens for a number of years.
Supervisor Royce, you said
you know something, Mr. Lewis, I let you speak. This is my turn now. You can speak after I'm done. Not a problem. I will, however, in defense of in throwing caution to the wind and relitigating a past decision of the board. We all know that the decision to sell to Aqua was based upon a total number of things, not just on how much money we were going to get when we sold the sale, whether it was $56 million, $53 million, $35 million, or even $1, which was Bucks County Water and Sewer's lowball offer. So, I really, that's me is totally irrelevant at this point. We're discussing how best to protect the residents of this township protect the money, keep the tax burden of this township as low as possible for many years to come. And which law firm has the best tools to make that happen? And I have to in this case support the motion to engage Obermeyers and et al. to do that job.
Mr. Chair, I wish to apologize to Mr. or Supervisor Blundy or Supervisor Weiss. Didn't mean to interrupt. When you indicated that the solicitor in question, or pardon me, the lawyer in question for Obermeyer is working on a trust now in Delaware County, was that your?
That's what I heard.
You heard. So was that Delcora?
I don't know. I know they're making a trust in Delaware County. Who that's from? I can make assumptions, but I don't know that. I just know that they're working on a protective trust for the residents of Delaware County.
If I could.
Sure, Suzanne, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. People often come to me and ask if I can help them with different types of law. And, my usual quip is, if you open a small hospital, I'm your go-to person, but short of that, I'm highly specialized. And that's what many attorneys are. Our solicitor and Barbara especially, they have done a great job for our township, and I've really been impressed with what we asked them to do. And they do a lot of different things. But in this particular situation, I do think this area, and I know that we can all say who Obermeyer's worked with before, municipal authorities, PUC entities, non-regulated entities, but they have a lot of experience generally in this space. I feel more comfortable with their pre-level of expertise. John, if you're correct that there's an ordinance that can be copied, I'm sure that they'll start by copying it as well. But for all those reasons, I think this might be an example of the expression penny wise and pound foolish, not something I want to be. And that is why I would be in support of the motion that I made.
Yeah, I guess my only thought is that, maybe it's me. I'm a relatively thrifty fellow, and when I see something online, I'll check another place to see if there's a lower price. I'll see the reviews of the product. Our experience hasn't been all that great, or at least in some folks' perspective, with the existing firm, and we have a solicitor that you yourself have said it does excellent work. Barbara, I think you're comfortable in saying you're confident in Hill Wallach's work in this area and confident that they could do an excellent job in this case. So it just, if this were that specialized and that much of a concern, I would talk to more than one person and I would negotiate the rate. But that's me. And again, I am really thrifty. And that's my perspective. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I come from private sector where everything's negotiated all the time. So I'm a hard no on this. It's almost comical, but I don't want to interrupt the public from their perspective as well.
Dan, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll be brief. But again, my main thing is, we've had this trend over the last several months of, giving out contracts or having presentations from companies to do tens of thousands of dollars worth of work, some of which are based off presentations or relationships, but no RFPs, nothing like that. So we don't have anything to compare it to, and it shows up and we have to vote on it. In this, that's not how I like to do business. I definitely think we owe it to our residents to, if not actually RFP it, then actually, since it does look like we have an option using our existing solicitor where we have existing contracts with terms and conditions and everything else, they're a known entity at a much better rate. To me, I think we owe it to our residents to get a quote from our solicitor to understand what they can do, excuse me, thinking of the same, towards the irrevocable trust for the township, and see if they can do it for a better cost. What we got from Obermeyer, excuse me again, is fairly brief and generic. There's no backup to prove their experience. I know folks have probably heard through the not rumor mill, but through the grapevine, I guess is a better term, that they may have done one of these somewhere, someplace outside of Bucks County, and they obviously have a long history of selling source systems, so they're aware of that proceeds, large number of proceeds come to municipalities, but every municipality seems to be doing something different with it. So again, I'm not saying that I would be a hard no against Obermeyer once we get something to compare them to, but this evening I don't know if I would ask to either table it or give Hill Wallach an opportunity to provide a similar proposal, and then once we get that, compare apples to apples and make the best decision for the township from a fiduciary responsibility perspective. That's my opinion. That's all, James. Thank you.
Yep.
Are you moving to table that, Solicitor Grenier?
I'm not a solicitor. I am not an attorney.
Yeah,
Licensed
sorry.
nowhere.
Supervisor, Grenier, to table this?
I can make. I wasn't thinking that, but I can make a motion to table if anyone would want to support that.
Okay, we have an open motion right now to approve Obermeyer, and we have a second on the floor. So let's get through this motion first. Is there somebody?
Motion to table takes precedence over the original
It
motion.
does.
Okay, so there's a second. Okay, so is there any? Do we need to discuss that?
There's no discussion.
No
On the
discussion.
table.
So all in favor to table the motion, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Opposed, say aye.
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 Motion to table is overruled 3-2. So there's public comment on this, John. Can you ask the gentleman to come
Sure.
up to the microphone?
The gentleman in the back, and I'm sorry, you would be second, sir, if you just want to come up and line up, because there's others, but, and for the recording secretary, please tell us your name and where you live, just the address. Yeah.
My name is Charles Quattrone. I live at 2025 Quarry Road.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, I recognize that when you deal with trust documents and foundations, it's a highly technical area. But just from the conversation tonight, it would seem to me that you should go out and RFP this rather than just rely on one or two or even a solicitor. Secondly, it seemed to me, and I was on the call last time too, that we really don't know what we're looking for yet. So it would be a good idea, I think, for the commissioners and the solicitor to develop a document that can serve as an RFP to send out to multiple firms that have to be legitimate firms and good sized firms that have experience in this area, and find out what the prices are. And third, and I wasn't going to say this, but I would have appreciated having my comments before motion was voted on. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, we haven't voted on the motion yet. Is there any other public comment regarding this?
My name is Richard May. I live at 1270 Creamery Road in Yardley. And I'm not here to talk about that particular thing, although it looks like it's going to be a long evening, given the start on the first item. We were led to believe at the last meeting that this was going to be a meeting to discuss the Snipes property and the play for all. And unless this is camouflaged, I've seen nothing on the agenda that suggests that that's going to be discussed.
I don't believe that any of those items are to be discussed at tonight's meeting. However, there is some Parks and Rec capital reserve money that we are looking to allocate. So no, I don't believe Snipes is on the agenda. I don't see it anywhere. Sorry if you were misled to think that that was going to be tonight's meeting.
It was specifically said, you really should attend this meeting. In fact, John, I think you're the one that suggested that to me.
At the time, sir, if I could, I had no idea what the agenda was, so I didn't get the agenda until Friday or Monday, this one, and there was no supporting documents as well.
Well, all I'm saying is a lot of these people here are for that reason, and it doesn't appear it's worth our while sticking around.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Any other public comment regarding the motion that's on the table? Hearing none, I call to question. All those in favor to consider to authorize Obermeyer, Redmond, Maxwell, Hipple, LLP to create irrevocable trust documents for Lower Makefield Township, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Opposed?
Motion carries 3-2.
No. No.
Moving on to agenda item number 5, consideration to approve the renovation of the Schuyler Drive tennis courts at an estimated cost of $400,000. As we all know, this has been a project that's been kind of sitting out there, and it's getting to the point where the courts are going to become unusable. I believe Monica is on the call. I don't know if you can pop in, Monica, and just give me give the board a quick synopsis of what's going on at Schuyler Court.
As you all have known for some time now, the Schuyler courts have been deteriorating quickly. We did an assessment a couple years back on some different repairs that we could do to the court. They at that time ranged anywhere from, I believe, $100,000 to $500,000 in repairs, depending upon the project scope that we decided on. Now they're at a point where I'm looking to close them. Some of the cracks are dangerously large. There's grass growing through them. It's probably, I have to say, it's probably one of our worst amenities at this juncture by a lot. It's definitely something that does need to be repaired, and that's why I really wanted to prioritize it as an ask for repair. The $400,000 that we had mentioned would repair them as is, so meaning they would stay the same structure as they are now. I didn't want to over ask for any huge repair. There's certainly other things that could be done to the courts that would cost more. This would be baseline repairing them as is now, and some water drainage remediation. So that's what I'm here tonight to talk about.
Monica, just a quick question. Is this a Band-Aid? Is this going to be a long-term? What's the effective life cycle of the improvements that are being done to the courts?
Well, you'll always have cracking on tennis courts. It's a large slab of concrete or blacktop. So there's always going to be cracking, and remediation, as long as we keep up with it, it should last a lot longer. The problem is that it had gone so long before it was addressed, and now it's because it was so pricey, it's been even longer. So as long as we keep up with maintenance, it should last fairly long before a large remediation like this. This repair here, now just I want to make sure I point some things out. This is the only court in the township that is east-west, meaning that at one point of the day you're going to have sun in your eyes. Most courts, or all courts, are intended to be installed north-south. So we're not fixing that issue. We're not adding handicap parking. We're not asking for any of that. We're just looking to make them playable and safe how they are now.
And off the top of your head, do you know when the last capital improvements to these courts were made?
I do not know off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
James, can I ask a clarifying question for that?
Yep.
Front? So I see there's a lot of, generally the rest of the agenda is Park and Rec, right? Different projects for Park and Rec. This $400,000 ask why is it on this particular agenda? Are we asking to use SOAR proceeds? Are we asking to just do this as part of our normal budget? Are we asking to use federal funds that we've been given? Like that's what is not clear to me as to what money are we looking to spend tonight on a lot of projects that look like maintenance projects that are normal budgetary projects.
I think what the strategy was, Dan, is that I think the Schuyler renovation was something that was going to be sewer proceeds. I believe that the remaining, if you look at agenda item number 6, which is about $785,000 to earmark, I believe that's to help the Park and Rec and Monica come up with some matching grant money if available from other sources. But I think it's just a commitment of the township to say we're putting that money towards those other projects in order to get the ball rolling on those projects.
All right. So a big part of selling the sewer system was paying off the golf course debt. It was the discussion, and that the golf course would then, between the golf course and these are elevated pool fees that would essentially cover most of Park and Rec. And now we're looking to basically use other monies outside of that to fund Park and Rec projects, where most of these look like maintenance projects that we shouldn't be. Once we do this, we're still reducing our available sewer funds that we would protect in the principal. There's still long-term maintenance that comes out of all of these items that will require more money in the future, that will have to be dealt with through the budget and normal means, as personal opinion these should be. And then we're not looking at this from a big picture perspective, where we're not, this entire $1 million+ tonight is all Park and Rec. We're not talking about any infrastructure, any other important parts of the township. I'm not opposed to any of these projects. It's just how we fund them is what I'm concerned about. I would want to see all of these big picture and have the infrastructure discussion and every other discussion that we need to have to spend all these sewer proceeds. So we're not having, 6 meetings where we spend $1 million, $2 million each time of sewer funds, so that we don't know when we're all said and done, our $20 million is suddenly $8 million because we went like the Oprah Winfrey show, where you get a car and you get a car, and by the end of it, we've reduced our principal because we've done all these special projects. That's not what I signed up for when I said let's put together a trust, because I want to protect the principal. I don't want to go spend it immediately on nice to have projects. I want to get it done, but I want to use it. I want to use the whole point of selling the sewer system was so that we could get rid of our debt, free up some money, so that we could budget for these things on an annual basis. And when we have more money, awesome, we can do more of these things. If we protect the principal of our sewer funds and we are able to invest it, that'll hopefully, a couple of percentage points will kick back a couple $100,000 or more a year. That gets you one of these projects just as part of the normal budget process and wouldn't eat away at the principal. So, and then we have, unfortunately, Kirk's not here, so I can't. I did want to ask him what I refer to as the federal monies that we have, and I know Fred, you know those very well, so I might lean on you to fund some of this, please. In terms of what we can spend that on, if we can allot some of those funds to something like this, something like some of these projects, right? In addition to infrastructure, I just want to know what pots we're taking from, what we can use it for, and just look at. I'll use the word holistic approach so that we can better understand where we're going to spend money. Because right now, tonight, I can't vote in favor of any of this just using sewer funds, because I need the big picture. That's not that I don't want to move. I think a lot of these projects we need to do. We've been talking about them. I think we need to understand how we're going to fund them while still protecting our principal. Like, compared to all those other projects I think we want to do that are, I'm using the general term infrastructure or something else that we also need in the township. So that's my thought process right now. So I'm of the mindset, kind of like I was with the law firm, where I would I don't know if tabling is the right word, but I would like to have a discussion about these items tonight, but also have a discussion about everything else that we want to do, and then take it back and look at and prioritize these things and figure out a plan, a nice, well thought out plan to pay for these items over the next few years, using all the sources that we have at our disposal.
No, and I think the point about the income from the golf course, going back to helping Parks and Recs infrastructure stuff is a great point. I think that was kind of the same mindset that I had when I looked at this. The only downside to that is that we're not going to be able to see that money until we're a year past the sewer sale and the debt's been paid off. So you're talking another 12 months down the road before we can even look at using any of that money to fund any of these projects. And as Monica said, if we don't do this tonight, those courts are being closed. So it's one of those things where we kind of have to take action. And again, we're in a position where, yes, we have a plan, and we need to have a plan about how we're going to do these things. I think that there is some really dire infrastructure things that have not been attended to for many years now. And I think that the opportunity is here for us to make these improvements as needed. And I think if we have the means to do it without significantly impacting the, you know, the principle of the sewer sale, I think that it's a step in the right direction, but that's just my opinion.
I'll just quickly respond. My thought, I think we're generally thinking similarly, actually. And I know we've had side conversations about this, but what I would like to see before I would say, yeah, let's go spend $400,000 on tennis courts after we just opened a bunch of them, right? Is, do we have a bridge or a culvert that's going to cost twice that much, that if it fails, roads have to close and people don't have access to things, or it creates a clear and present danger to our residents that we're not discussing at the same time as we're discussing, you know, fixing some tennis courts, which are, don't get me wrong, I love playing tennis, but, you know, it's something I grew up with, but it's a more, I want to make sure we don't have any bridges or culverts or any other things that are going to fall apart that are, you know, from a relative perspective, more important to our residents in the immediate future. That's all.
And I do think I'm not sure if she sent it out yet. There is, in the next BOS agenda, there will be, some of that will be addressed. So I'm not sure if Katie had sent that out yet, but if she hadn't, you'll see that in the next BOS agenda. I think she sent it out, but if you want to open that up, that is in there. Susanna, do you want to add something?
Yeah, back to the tennis courts. Monica, you know, I appreciate that you're trying to be cost conscious. Those courts are, you know, a disaster, but how much would it cost to repaint them so that we could not have them unusable for certain times because of the way the sun is oriented? Because I had hoped we were going to be able to take care of that when we fix these courts.
If we reoriented them and did all the handicap, it'd probably be around $600,000-$700,000. If we made them how they should be, like if we're going to dedicate money and you want to, so it could be somewhere between $400 and $600,000, $100,000.
So, you know, I thought, and I've been wrong before, right? I thought that we could fix them as you've outlined, but then paint them differently. They may not be good enough for the open, but they would still be pretty much regulation, you know, while keeping the same pad already in place, etc. And we could fix that issue that way. If that's not correct, I believe you. I would ask you to look into it to see if we could get it done. Again, maybe they're not perfectly regulation size, but they're good enough, and it helps make them, you know, more usable.
Well, to turn them, we'd have to reinstall every one of the standards holding up the nets, and regrade the pad, which would be, that's what the expense is. If you just repair it now, the crack sheet, that's just taking the 3 inches off the top down to stone and just repave it and repaint it as it is in this current shape. That's where we're looking at that $400,000.
Okay, thank you.
Monica, what kind of feedback were you getting from users with the current orientation? I mean, is there a big pushback saying, you know, these are unusable during certain hours of the day, or is that just general, you know, you've been out there to observe that?
To be honest, it's not a huge complaint. I think the kids play when it's shaded in the evening. That's the courts that are used by the league, the YM Tennis League. They're out there mostly in the evenings, but I imagine this summer they get pretty hit hard from the sun in the day. Now they don't really, they're pretty easy, the tennis team, but it is not oriented correctly, and I'm sure they'd be very grateful if we did switch it.
Well, I'm glad they know we can't control the sun, but yeah, it's a wish listing. Would that limit the courts too? Because I believe it's 4 across right now. Would that limit the layout of the courts? Would it only be 3 across, or like 3 the opposite way?
I think it'd have to be turned like the Memorial Park courts are, 2 and 2 instead of 4 across.
Got you. And they would be still regulation size courts?
Yes, from what I understand, they would still be regulation size.
Okay. Supervisor Lewis, yes.
Yeah. Would this project be eligible to be, I would think, be able to be paid for by bond proceeds? We still have excess bond money from our last bond issue that's in an account. So that could be a source of funds for this. There's no reason why that couldn't have been done earlier in the process? And would this also fall under stimulus funds? Could they be used as well for a project like this, given the frameworks that we've had in discussions in the past? So those are two issues I definitely would want to know about before voting on it. And third, I didn't receive anything backing this up in terms of what's being proposed, the analysis. Did the township engineer review this and provide an assessment?
John, the township engineer did provide an assessment, probably, I'm going to say 2018. And then when we saw the quotes, they were just way too high to proceed with the projects. And he did re-quote it at the 400,000 for the baseline bid. We had a discussion yesterday about what it would take to just do them as they are and how much more it would take to adjust them.
Okay. To me, it seems like it would be preferable to get that information before the items placed on the agenda. I know that's not, Monica, not your fault, but it's difficult to vote on one line and not do any research. Now, I have not played those tennis courts this year. I did last year. I know that there are issues there. We've had issues with those courts in the past, by the way, because there was a section that had sunk in. But to me, I don't know that I can vote for this at this time because I just don't have enough information. I would suggest if you want people to make $400,000 decisions, you got to give them more than one line to make an assessment of that. And that's really directed at the chair.
Yeah, I get that, John. So Monica was the one that brought this before me after vetting it through the township manager and through the township engineer. So I believe that the three professionals at the township level have vetted this and brought it before an executive board for a vote. I don't believe that an executive board has to do a deep dive into what exactly the project is going to be before making a decision on it. If you want to make your decisions that way, that's fine. That's not how I make my decisions. I make my decisions based on what three professionals at the township level have told me. So with that being said, is there any public comment? Actually,
well, pardon me, if I could, before public comment, it's okay for you to place this on the agenda. I don't have a problem with that. But if you place no backing materials on it and you expect us to simply vote for it because you think it's a good idea, and three people in the staff have said it's a good idea.
Yeah, just for clarification, this has been lingering since 2018, and we're looking at a situation where we're going to have to close tennis courts because they're going to be unusable and unsafe. So if that's what you want, if you want residents to play on unusable, unsafe tennis courts, then we can vote for that. But in this case, I think that we all realize that there's an issue at these courts that need to be remedied as soon as possible. And just lingering over decisions and thinking about decisions and wondering whether or not we should make this decision isn't what we should be doing for our residents. We should make sure that they have usable, safe assets.
So, Chair McCartney, respectfully, I cannot make decisions without more than one line of. I don't make $400,000 decisions without one line. Okay. When I have a job outside here. I know that it seems hard for many to believe. Every day I work with very large enterprises, and to get a $400,000 deal is not easy. It requires some pre-thought. And here I got nothing, right? If you believe that this was that big of an issue and you had known about it since 2018, which obviously we've known it's an issue since 2018, if it's now become a significant issue, one that you deem to be a significant concern, that's okay, right? But you say, okay, this is now a priority. I'm going to get the documentation. I'm going to document that it's now worse than we thought it was in 2018. I'm going to have reports from the township engineers suggesting that here are our alternatives and options, right? I will have a rough price estimate for that. And then again, if it rose to an emergency level status, which I still have not heard yet, if it was that big of an emergency, they would say, hey, John, can you come check out these courts because they're really bad, right? No one said that to me. I get a lot of emails, calls. No one's saying, hey, you got to check out these courts. They're really bad. I will now check them out. Trust me. I've checked out the other new courts. But you cannot expect supervisors to simply vote, oh, well, the staff said that this was okay, right? because that's not our job to rubber stamp the staff. We are elected, we serve the people in the audience and throughout Lower Makefield. They expect us to do due diligence, right? Yeah, listen, if my mom tells me I love her, I check sources, right? And so I do the research. So I'm sorry, I have a higher expectation. There's an incident we could talk about that shows where we've had real issues in the past, but I'm letting that slide today. But come on, the chair, you deserve to treat the supervisors and the public better by providing enough information to make a real decision.
Okay, thanks for your feedback. Fred, do you have a comment?
Yes, to answer Supervisor Lewis's question, we can use the bond fund to fund these projects. However, the motion on the table is to use sewer funds. We cannot use relief money to fix the tennis courts, so that's off the table. That being said, there's many times when we've had recommendations from staff to fix something, to add something without the documentation at hand. I think rebuilding the wall of the pool, fixing the slides at the pool were one of those things, because previously, in the effort to save a few dollars, auto body shops were used, and somebody with I think a sixth grader to put silly putty on the walls of the pool to help stop leakage, which didn't stop, and we ended up wasting millions of gallons of water and hundreds of thousands of dollars in useless repair bills. So I think that I'm going to have to agree with Supervisor McCartney that our staff is well versed in finding and dealing with and giving the board recommendations. Of course, we don't have to accept those recommendations. We can go a different way, but I have a lot of faith in our department heads and in our professionals to come up with these kind of recommendations. So I'm very comfortable with what we have. And as far as money from other sources to fund these projects, especially this one in particular, one of the reasons why we did sell the golf course, sell the sewer system, was because the golf course now will present with anywhere between $750,000 and $1 million in positive cash flow, which will be used for the operation and maintenance of not only a golf course but other park and rec facilities, and be able to maintain, hopefully in near perpetuity, all of our inventory, our park and rec inventory infrastructure is one of the reasons why we did sell the sewers. And the fact that because we neglected these areas for so long, and that we do need to spend maybe up to $1 million to do these one and done projects, maybe not the best use of the way we things and not the way we wish to do things, but it's probably the most logical way to do it. Get this out of the way, and then we don't have to worry about maintenance because we have significant positive cash flow from our enterprise fund. And I'm happy with that, to tell you the truth. And technically, whether they came from sewer funds or the bond fund proceeds that are only available because we sold the sewers, is really, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, because when it comes down to it, it's all going to be in the same pot. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiss. Any other comments? Dan?
Yeah, James, I was looking at the per your comment before, I looked at what we have so far for the agenda for the next meeting, and I don't see anything other than paying off some advertising, couple things, but those aren't using sewer funds, and then paying, I think, one of the sewer projects, the manhole project, off. I don't see anything related to any type of plan for financing or addressing any other projects in the township, infrastructure or otherwise.
Engineers report item number 9A and B.
So those are not being paid for by sewer funds. We've been told that those will be paid for by stimulus money.
Correct.
I guess your contention is what the source of funds is to pay for the tennis courts.
That's tennis courts and any other item on the agenda this evening is really and this isn't contention. I'm not trying to be contentious. I'm not trying to argue with anyone. My approach is tonight seems like I'm being a little silly here, but it's the park and rec party, right? So tonight we're just going to want to spend a lot of money on park and rec stuff, right? But the way and it's perfectly fine to have the discussion about certain park and rec projects and where they fall within our hierarchy of needs at the township. But doing that completely in a silo, separate from anything else that we might need or want for that matter in the township and how we're going to pay for it, to me, I just can't do, because I need to be able to, if I'm going to take money from the principal of our sewer sale that we're supposed to be protecting and put it towards really anything in the township, I want to make sure that I have all the information and have really an overall plan for spending in the township that includes park and rec, that includes infrastructure, which would also, public works, that may include tree replacement projects, that may include buying open space, that may include putting making something up, putting solar panels on the township building, right? All stuff that we've talked about in the past. But I feel strongly that we need to have when we have these special meetings, I feel strongly that we should have all of that on the table at once so that we can then do a true comparison rather than having individual meetings where we're not sure what the next meeting is going to have on the table, so that we, do I want to spend $1 million on park and rec tonight, but then I can't spend that money on something else that maybe other folks think is more important, even though we all appreciate the park and rec projects and we all see the benefit to doing something. I can't wrap my head around voting on this stuff tonight without having all that other information. And I'm fairly certain it's going to go 3-2 and they're going to be voted for, and we'll get park and rec projects, and then we'll have another $1 million less in our sewer funds, and then some other big project will come up and we'll have another special meeting, and all of a sudden there'll be another $3 or $4 million, and there goes more sewer proceeds. And I'm just going to be sitting here saying, what did we just spend all of our money on, and what do we have left in our trust? And I won't have anything to plan for in the future, and that bugs me.
Okay.
So,
any other comments?
Yeah, I guess along those lines, I mean, we haven't had, and again, this is directed solely at the chair. We received the agenda and nothing else until yesterday, where we got a 2-paragraph memo where the township manager's name is misspelled, asking to pay over 2 times the going rate for a service. Why didn't you're the chair, James? Why didn't you put together? I mean, I didn't get anything, like nothing, just the agenda. There was no supporting material.
You didn't get the memo from Obermeyer?
I got that yesterday. That's all I got.
Did you get it?
I did, yeah, yesterday.
Okay.
Well, it's not okay. I didn't get anything on items 5, 6, or at all. No detail.
So that's why we have Monica here. So if you want to ask the head of our Parks and Recs department what the details are on those agenda items, she's more than adequate to answer those questions before you make a vote on anything.
But I won't know what to ask her if I don't have a proposal. If you give me one line, again, I don't know the best questions to ask, right? And sometimes there are questions I might ask that, well, quite frankly, I don't want to ask in public because, they might not be nice. And it'd be better sometimes to say, hey, I don't understand this. Can you help me through? Right? On a one-on-one basis, I've called staff all the time with that. I say, hey, I don't get, can you help me understand before the meeting? I just want to get perspective. I didn't get any of that.
Did you reach out to Monica when you got this agenda and asked her for perspective on any of these one lines?
I was expecting more to come. Are you suggesting I've got to call everybody to get the follow-up materials?
But that's what you said that you typically do.
No, after I get the materials, if there's something I don't understand, I would call, but I didn't get any materials.
So you didn't, but you don't understand any of these agenda items and you didn't want to question any of them until now?
You didn't give me any supporting materials.
Yeah, I think it's semantics, John. If you have any questions,
Pardon me?
anything you're gonna vote on tonight, I think we have the person in the room that can answer those questions. So I think rather than point at me saying that I didn't give you adequate information to make a decision on, you can ask those questions of that individual and make an informed decision based on her answers. Is that fair?
Do you want me to ask Monica more detailed questions now? The questions I would have asked after
That's why
materials?
Sure, that's why she's here. I mean, I find it hard to believe that this is the first time that you're having these conversations with Monica regarding any of these capital projects or any of these improvements. I'm pretty sure that you've had conversations in the past or been involved in something in the past where you knew what the status was of our current.
Yeah, I received more detail in 2018 when we weren't sure about the courts, right? And we knew that there was an issue with them. You're telling me something's changed, but I have not gotten any new information.
Well, it's not gotten better.
Okay, but I don't know how worse it is. And I don't know, and to Supervisor Granger's point, compared to what and other projects, right?
So Monica, and I'm not going to speak for Monica, she can speak for herself, but she's clearly said to you as on the board that we're in danger of closing these courts immediately.
Right. Okay. Was there any alternatives considered?
To closing the court, leaving it open in an unsafe and dangerous way. I'm not quite sure how to answer
Closing
that.
some of the courts, mitigating it partially for part of the year. I mean, there's all kinds of different things.
So if you're familiar with these courts, it's a big chain link fence around 4 tennis courts. I don't know how you close part of the courts. Do you take down the nets, I guess, is what you're asking?
But if that's what you want to know, then just ask Monica. Ask her, Monica.
She's right here.
Is that feasible?
Monica, is it feasible that we close one of the tennis courts but leave others open? Are there some in worse condition than others? Do you have pictures to show us how bad the tennis courts have become?
I do have pictures. I do not have them handy right now, but I'd be glad to grab them for you at some point or another. You know, it doesn't, yeah, you know, you and I have been out there before. They've certainly gotten much, much worse. The cracks are wider. I wouldn't close just one court because then it leaves the cracks to be walked over by residents. I wouldn't continue wasting money patching courts because, you know, then it's just a waste of money rather than doing the real fix that needs to be done.
How much does it cost to patch the courts?
You could probably patch them for $40,000-$50,000.
Okay. So $40,000 or $50,000 to patch the courts.
Yeah,
and
but
how quick? Huh?
It's not a fix.
I understand that. Let's just say, for the sake of argument here, it's $40,000. I patch the courts. They're open for this summer, and then next summer, right? We've got a plan to repair them, right? So you're saying, well, wait a second, you're wasting $40,000 here. Well, not necessarily, because, you know, who knows what the price will be next year? Could be higher, could be lower, right, to restore them. And in the same interim period of time, we might have another source of funds to fix them, right?
You think the price might come down? You just want to understand that, John. You think the price, in good faith.
No, I conceded that they may go up. The point I'm suggesting is,
You said they may go up, they may go down. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
yeah, I don't know, 400. We've had situations, asphalt prices go down, they go up. And granted, everybody's experiencing inflation, which for most folks they haven't dealt with since mid 80s, right? Early 80s. And it shades people's thinking, right? If you told me, you say, hey, listen, John, I could patch them for 40 or 50, right? But I want to do it for 400,000 now because if I try and do it next year, it'll be 500,000, right? I don't have any of that perspective or understanding or alternatives. And I apologize, Monica, because this isn't your fault, right? This is simply the chair did not provide any information for us to consider. right? And,
With
and
that
that's
being
the
said,
frustrating part.
okay, you're right, John. With that being said, is there a motion to authorize?
There's not a motion on the
approve-
floor right now.
I know, but
so
I'm
There's
entertaining.
not a motion.
I know, I'm entertaining one.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
table this till a future meeting.
I second that.
I already moved before you made that motion. and
No, you
Fred-
didn't. There wasn't a motion on the floor.
James said it. I so moved, and Fred.
No, he said he would entertain a motion. There wasn't a motion.
Okay, let's take care of the table.
And we're a second.
All those in favor of tabling the motion, raise your hand and say aye.
What? I couldn't hear you.
All those in favor of tabling the motion, raise your hand and say
Yep.
aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay, raise your hand.
Yay.
Okay, so the motion's not being tabled. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve the renovation of Schuyler Drive tennis courts at an estimated cost of $400,000.
So moved.
Motion made by Supervisor Blundy, seconded by Supervisor Weiss. Any supervisor discussion? Yes, Dan.
Yeah, so, this is getting frustrating. So normally, and this goes back to other agendas that I tried putting together when I was chair, and then the way they've come across really the last 4 years. And what happens is, we get these agendas without all the information we need. And I'm not pointing at you, James, so don't get defensive. I'm going somewhere else.
I am.
And what happens is the township manager gets an idea, something he wants to get approved. He canvasses the 3 supervisors that he thinks will vote for it, doesn't tell the other 2 supervisors anything, and then he sets you up to vote in a certain way. Specific to some park and rec projects and some other issues, he's told me in the past that he manages around, I'm using that in quotes because that's a direct quote, Supervisor Lewis, so that he doesn't have to deal with him. And I'm getting really, really frustrated because this is an ongoing issue on multiple items, not just park and rec, not just sewer proceeds, but so many issues over the last 4 years where we just don't get information, right? He made a comment. I remember reading.
I'm sorry,
the,
Dave.
I'm not done. Excuse me.
Interrupt you, but I just want to make sure.
You are interrupting me, though.
I know, but I want to make sure you're talking about when you were chair. If you could just keep it focused on when you were chair, what you did, because I don't want you to talk about when I was chair.
Well, I will talk about whatever I would like to talk about, so please stop interrupting me. I know that's your thing at every meeting, but I'm really getting tired of it.
Well, I don't like when you just make up stuff.
I'm not making up anything. So anywho, what happens is, he'll want something passed. We don't get the information. And then he puts it on the agenda. He knows he's going to get his 3 votes. And we sit here and say, where did that come from? That's been happening for 4 years. Almost every agenda. Okay. I remember I read the transcript of the court case where, James, you called in to the court case. And when Kurt's testimony was, somebody asked him if I had an issue with him. Right. And he said, oh, well, I think he got mad at me once because I didn't provide all the information on one agenda. So I want to make it very clear. I've been frustrated with him for 4 years because he does this on a regular basis and refuses to provide information. And if he doesn't get a vote that he wants, he recanvasses to get the vote that he wants. And this tonight is a perfect example of that, where we constantly get these companies coming up that he's had a marketing presentation to go spend tens of thousands of dollars on something, and he puts it on the agenda without an RFP because he's made a decision that that's the company he wants to go with. He's probably spoken to multiple supervisors to get them on board, and then we come in not having any of that information, and we're like, why is this on the agenda? And then it ends up being 3-2, and it's completely out of the blue. And it's happened almost every week this year. And I know he's not here, but that's been the history, and I'm tired of it. We need a plan. All these, he made this decision to sell a sewer system to supposedly improve the financial stability of the township, right? And as soon as we get the money, we have meetings to spend it all on park and rec projects, and we don't talk about anything else. That to me is the most frustrating, almost hypocritical. I'm not sure we're there to that word yet, but it's leaning that way pretty strongly, that we're not the whole reason to sell the sewer system was to improve our finances, not to go spend money on projects. It's to do those things that are absolutely necessary and set us up for the future. If that's the goal, I'm all in. I'm not seeing that right now. I'm seeing a lot of last several weeks. I'm seeing a lot of, hey, I'm leaving the township. Let's just start. These they seem like going away presents to people, and I can't get behind any of them because none of them make any sense because they're all done in a little vacuum and little silos, and we can't make decisions. But I'm not getting the information from the township manager to know what his grand plan is for certain things. He's not telling me. So if he has a plan to go spend money on infrastructure that he's telling certain supervisors, I'm not getting it. Maybe he says, okay, we're going to do $1 million on Park and Rec and $2 million here and $3 million there and whatever. I don't have that plan. I have no idea. So I can't vote yes on any of this stuff until I have that grand plan. So
Yeah, and just so you know, the point of number 4 in this agenda was to engage a firm to set up that trust for us. So I think that the board as a whole has that vision where we are, and that's the most important. And I think when I say important, that's going to carry the most weight. I think we can all agree that's going to be where the majority of this money is going to end up, right?
Respectfully, Mr. Chair,
I hope
though,
so. I really hope so.
But you're not demonstrating that's the case because you haven't provided the supervisors with a perspective of how much you want to protect and how much you want to spend. Right? So if you say, I don't get to make that decision, John. I think I don't get to make that decision. I think the board does. Right. Well, okay, you're the chair. You get to set the agenda, though.
Well, you've also expressed that you want to put all of the money away into a trust. That's your point, correct?
I would be more than happy if all of the money were placed in a trust.
But we already voted to earmark some money for Patterson Farm, and you voted yes on that, correct?
I think I don't know. I forgot to remember.
So, yeah, I just want to make sure you're on the same page. So you can't say that, you want to protect all the money, but then vote yes for Patterson Farm.
So now you're going to cause me a hypocrite because I voted for Patterson Farms?
No, I'm just saying I want to.
Well, now I'm saying, tell me what the rest of the money you want to spend on.
I don't know.
What's your proposal? You're the chair. You set the agenda.
I don't have a proposal.
You don't have a proposal. You don't have an agenda. You don't have supporting materials.
Yeah, I'm looking at projects that have been outstanding at the township for many years.
Yeah, but before you get in a high horse about that, where were you? You've had the chair now for 6 months. You could have told us 3-4 months ago, hey, these projects are important and we need to spend money on them. And by the way, here are 3 other funding sources. Or, hey, we should apply for grants on some of these where we can get them.
Well, I think that what I opened with when I was talking about item number 6 item number 6 about earmarking money, I think that does allow Monica to go and look for grant matches. Is that correct?
It doesn't say that. It's not on here.
Well, James, in your defense, James,
sure.
When we first started the conversations about having special meetings, right? The idea you put forward, which I got behind, I'm still behind it, is that these special meetings are to talk about how we're going to spend the money moving forward, right? And how we're going to protect things, and we're going to address all these different items. And I voted for Patterson Farm because I think it's very important. We had the big plan that's still ongoing. It's an organic plan that will keep going, and it's a big deal. What I would like to see is, rather than making motions to spend money tonight, we make motions to direct our township staff to develop recommendations across the board for how we spend the money, how we organize the money, how we fund things, whether it's sewer money or infrastructure money, or stimulus money, or just normal budget process, whatever it may be, that we ask them for a plan. And then we have kind of like we do our special budget meetings, right? And we have the department heads come in and explain these items to us, and we handle it sort of like a mini budget meeting, but it's more focused on particular funds and what our long-term plan is. And we say, hey, okay, some of these are really good projects. Looks like we might have a couple different options to fund them. Awesome. Let's see which one makes sense. And then we move, and then we know we have this again. I think Fred, you quoted a number of like between the sewer proceeds and the stimulus money, something along the lines of 24 to 26 million is what I have in my head, roughly. I'm not trying to put you in a corner on that, but you know, what do we? Let's look at that big picture and say, what are we doing with that? And have a special meeting. And that's what I was hoping these special meetings would be, where we don't have just one focus, and we just have a plan around that. We talk about it, we work it out, we try and prioritize, we move things around, whatever it may be. We look for options. You know, we ask Monica questions, we ask Jim Majewski questions, we ask Greg questions if he's still around, we ask Andy questions about certain things, and we just get total feedback, and that allows us to be very deliberate in how we do these things. And then what that also allows us to do is immediately after doing that, our budget meetings start pretty quickly thereafter. So we're already in that mindset where we say, okay, if we can't pay it forward immediately with this, let's put it in the 2023 budget. Let's plan for it in 2024, whatever it may be. Let's plan this out a year or two, and let's go forward with that. That's how. And I know, James, you and I talk about that a lot. That type of process, different versions of that, but generally that process, and that's what I'd like. Yes, I'm frustrated tonight because we're very focused on one thing, and there's some of this going on, which happens, but really would like to see the plan. That's, I know I've said it that different ways, probably 3 or 4 times tonight, but that's how strongly I feel about it.
If I could echo some of Supervisor Grenier's remarks, I think part of the challenge here is really the township manager has to provide a plan.
You left to the motion.
Pardon?
There's a motion, right?
Right.
He's Robert ruling me to death. So talk about tennis courts, or don't talk about tennis.
Pardon me, you're interrupting me. So you're interrupting me. You just interrupted Supervisor Grenier.
Point of order. Now I get to interrupt you, and I would remind you that there's a motion on the floor, and your comments must be focused on the subject of the motion.
All righty. So allow me to get back to what we're talking about here. Supervisor Grenier laid out his concerns about how the process is working here, right? And specifically, he identified circumstances where the township manager did not engage supervisors and did not provide adequate reporting or analysis. That township manager is leaving the township effective July 4th. He will no longer be the township manager. And so as a consequence, it's going to be very difficult for us to get some of the stuff that we're looking for right now. And that's why I suggested an interim township manager, or at least perhaps many of these decisions are pretty far reaching. It would be ideal to have the new township manager provide their perspective on it. Again, this is all germane because we're talking about this particular earmark, which is part of a larger plan. So it's germane to the motion on the table. And it's a concern. Again, it's very frustrating to me that we don't have a plan here. Don't have a plan. Don't get any supporting documents. You know.
Thanks for the feedback.
I get that you want to interrupt and run me over. There are a ton of people here who want to talk.
Yeah, I understand your position on it. I think everybody understands your position on it. We appreciate it, and that's it. Supervisor Weiss, did you want to add something?
Yes, and the motion is on the table to allocate $400,000 for the courts. As with all these other projects, and you know, this is one project that was talked about for a long time. That we can use sewer proceeds for that is great. To the overall sense that I'm hearing from a couple of the supervisors, I kind of disagree. We've known for years how this money is going to be allocated. I mean, our three basic rules: pay off the debt, improve infrastructure, and protect a large segment of this amount. Well, the debt has been taken care of. So now it's a matter of infrastructure and protecting a sizable amount of this money. I don't think any of us now disagree with those three basic concepts. I get, whether it's $10 or $20, I understand that. And I can also understand some frustration on the part of some of the members of this board. However, as the consensus is that we will protect a large portion of what's remaining and fix our infrastructure, which, to tell you the truth, we've already been doing that. We have a road program that's now 200% of what it once was. We have an increased staff. We're purchasing, which will be on the agenda in the near future, I've seen, community development software, which will make the lives of our residents a little easier as well. All coming out of proceeds that are now made available because of the sewer sale. And these have been we've been working on these since the 2022 budget. I hear what has been said, but I'm not buying it. I can't buy it because it's not true. And if you wish to blame somebody, well, that's your right to blame somebody. I just can tell you that I get my information. I ask for what I have questions on. I get answers, and I make the decision based on what I have. And if one of my colleagues decides that they do not have that information for whatever reason, or don't understand things and have not discussed it with those that have more information or can provide clarity, well, that's totally their right to get into that position and vote accordingly as well. Majority rules in this country, and when it comes to this kind of thing. And I appreciate the negativity of some of my colleagues, but I'm ready to progress. If there's, and Mr. Chair, I ask of you at this point if we've all been heard, and if there's nothing new to add, I would suggest for public comment and then take it to a vote.
Thanks. I was going to move in that direction. Is there any public comment regarding the issue?
Actually, there's a number of folks.
Excellent.
If you could line up,
Yep.
if you just want to come up one at a time, please again state your name and your address. And I saw there's another gentleman in the back. I haven't forgotten you. And if there's others, no worries.
My name is Kevin Cawley. I live at 1355 James Court. I wish to communicate my concerns with regard to how LMT is addressing the use of the proceeds from the sale of the sewer system and other sources. From what I can discern, Play for All and other projects are being considered for funding without comprehensive needs analysis. The analysis should address all alternative uses for the use of the proceeds rather than just looking at Play for All and selected projects based on statistically invalid surveys. A comprehensive survey should be sent to each and every LMT resident to canvass all potential alternative uses for the funds, which would include but not be limited to completion of existing projects, pay down of all existing debt, reduction in tax rates to offset sewer rate increases resulting from the sale of the sewer system. This can be funded through reduction in debt service charges. Complete paving of all roads in the township that are not in compliance with industry standards. Many roads have not been paved in over 30 years. Purchase of open space, parks and recreation programs such as Play for All would be included. Based on the canvas, every potential use of the proceeds should be subjected to a cost-benefit analysis. Potential uses should be ranked from highest benefit with lowest cost to lowest benefit with highest cost. It should be stressed that this is not found money. It is the result of future sewer rate increases that will be paid by Lower Makefield Township residents in the township for decades to come. As I'm sure you agree, the board has a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Lower Makefield and to spend all amounts in the most judicious and responsible manner. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Is there any other public comment?
Yep.
Harry Gamble, 16 Maplevale Drive, Yardley. This doesn't have to do with unique woods that I like you to consider to preserve. This is the woods between Maplevale and McKinley Avenue. This is almost a magical place. Right now, they're working on the bridge, a Summers Bridge over the canal. And there's no place like it except farther up on the canal. And we have the people in the area here. I have a petition signed by about over 40 people. The undersigned residents of Lower Makefield petitioned Lower Makefield Board of Supervisors to save the McKinley Avenue Woods and the Delaware Canal entrance from further development. We petitioned the board to make this a state park or maintain the woods with local and state funds. The area provides a carbon balance for residents that have to deal with the airport and bridge traffic. Additionally, this has been home for wild turkeys, 50 varieties of birds, and land turtles that make this home. There was an article not too long ago in Time magazine about the woods providing a balance. And in Mapleville, we have the I-95 traffic that you could hear at night, and also the airplanes overhead. And I also consider this the children's woods. There was an article in the paper about children making designs and painting on seashells and on stones and leaving them, and other children picking them up throughout the woods. And this was an article in one of the local papers. And I believe a lot of people already know that we have a severe flooding problem, and I think the township's working on that from the articles that I read in the paper. And we thank you. We hope you consider this also as part of the problem.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I believe that we are working towards the Mapleville. Dan, I think that's probably what you want to give some feedback on. You're on mute.
Mr. Gamble, was it?
Yes.
Two things I wanted to point out. One, yes, from a flooding perspective, he seems to be aware of, and this will be on our next agenda on Wednesday, James. I saw that, where we're looking to make improvements to the stormwater management system to mitigate the flooding in Mapleville. That's already starting. That's something I believe the board has approved moving forward with, and then we're going to go out to bid and execute that. So that's going to have an impact this year. So hopefully you're aware of that. Secondly, I don't live in Mapleville, but I run through Mapleville all the time. I live very close by. There's not sure Supervisor Lewis was on the board at the time, but the township, was it 2016 time frame, did purchase, I believe, 3.5 acres of that tract that's known as the Jennings tract. There's a nice sign that says preserve Lower Makefield preserved land on the edge of it that allows access to the Summers Camelback Bridge, which thanks again to the Friends of the Delaware Canal for paying $30,000 to fix that bridge when DCNR couldn't fund it. So got to give another thank you to them.
Yes.
The parcel that is the portion of the parcel that's connected to the Jennings tract that is not preserved was they did try and apply for zoning variances within the last year. Thankfully, we voted that down 3-2. We voted to oppose that 3-2. And then from what I understand, because it is a zoned as resource protection because of everything you just talked about, how important the woods are. So we voted 3-2 to oppose future development in there or subdividing in there because it's important to this board. And I hope it continues to be that way. In terms of whether or not we would purchase the remainder of that land, the remainder of I believe it's Mr. Jennings is the name of the property owner. I don't know that it's available. I don't know that he wants to sell. We haven't entered into any of those conversations, but I want you to know though, that there is a portion of that land that is permanently preserved thanks to the township's the previous board. I'll give them credit for it. And that was probably some of the most efficient open space money we've ever been able to spend as a township because the state covered most of it for us. But it was a great pickup, and I use it.
That was
so.
just a small path back to the canal, and it also is access to the river, but just a small path that was purchased.
Actually, it was 3 acres. It was over 3 acres, not just the path.
It goes quite a distance all the way back to the canal. But we thank you for considering the remainder. And I hope that the flooding problem is solved, because I've lived there 49 years, and I've been flooded out 3 times. Every 10 years, a major 5 to 6 feet of water hit the whole area, and many of the automobiles have been flooded out. And we thank you for what you have done, and hopefully you can continue your help there. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks. And you should see some progress on the stormwater project. I think by the fall, you should see, because we're not only are we fixing the stormwater problem, we're also repaving the whole area because your roads are pretty chewed up. So you're getting both this year. So keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? And can I just remind the audience members, public comment right now, we are talking about the Schuyler tennis courts. Any other public comment regarding future sewer fund proceeds or anything that we're doing with proceeds should be reserved for the end of the meeting. So if you could just keep your comments to the topic of the Schuyler tennis courts, we would all appreciate that. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Beth Cawley, James Court, Yardley, PA. I do have to, this might not directly relate to the tennis courts, but as a taxpayer, I'm concerned at the way the board is conducting business.
Ms. Cawley.
I see sniping and negative attitudes, 3-2 voting blocks, smirking, laughing, but this is serious business. We're talking about taxpayers' dollars. And when people like Dan and John are presenting intelligent ideas, the other 3 supervisors are smirking and laughing and blowing it off.
Okay.
I find it appalling as a taxpayer and incomprehensible that when 2 people bring up an intelligent comment to get a second proposal from the existing law firm that's $150 versus, I believe, $390, and you just blow it off. I'm a taxpayer. I wouldn't pay 2.5 times more for something unless I did my homework and my research and got multiple bids. I don't think anyone takes the first bid when they get something done at their home. They do comparative bids. I'm a taxpayer. I don't like to see my money wasted that way through game playing. And I see these 3-2 bloating voting blocks, and I see intelligent comments just being ignored, and 3 other supervisors snickering, laughing. And it always seems like it's a done deal and you've already made your decisions and know just the way you're voting. And I don't think that's fair to taxpayers. I pay good money to live in this township, and I expect to be represented fairly, not through some game playing. This is a frivolous use of taxpayer money, like paying 2.5 times more for a law firm and not even being open-minded enough that you would get a bid from the existing township solicitor. I mean, I'm really appalled at the way the board operates. It's like watching children.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
My other comment I'll save till the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments regarding the Schuyler tennis courts?
Hello, Charles Quattrone, 2025 Quarry Road. At the last meeting, and this does relate to $400,000, by the way. At the last meeting, it was mentioned that you had not determined how much you were going to put into the trust and how much you weren't going to put into the trust. So if you don't know how much money you're not putting in the trust, how can you spend that money beforehand? Secondly, where did this $400,000 number come from? Was this bill sent out for bid, so we know if we're getting a good price? And thirdly, all these are related because it's all related to the sewer money. The other thing is, I think you mentioned that the original idea was to take this money from the revenues from the golf course, or the income from the golf course, but you couldn't wait that long, so you wanted to take it out of the sewer money. Well, my question is, if you take it out of the sewer money, when the money comes in from the golf course, are you going to put it back into the sewer money? So I have these questions, and I haven't heard anything to answer them.
It's a great question. I can answer the last part of that question. I know that one of the proposals that I would be looking for a trust would be something that we could add money to, even if it was, you know, obviously irrevocable, but we could add money to in the future. So that's a great point. Yeah, I think that that's something that we would definitely want to entertain and explore with the law firm once we start getting into those discussions. As far as what the tennis courts cost, the 400,000, I think Monica would be more equipped to answer that question. Monica, do you want to take that?
Yes, yeah, the $400,000 is not bid yet. It's an earmark of money so that we can bid the project. I mean, without having the money allocated to be able to bid, we wouldn't even be able to move forward at all with the project. So really what we're asking for is an earmark of $400,000 so that we can go forward with the whole bid process and speccing and all of that. That is really what we're looking for today. The $400,000 number does come from our township engineer, who just recently did a couple projects very similar. And he was able to estimate about $400,000 would fix the courts currently as they are.
So I would suggest then that before you spend any additional funds, you determine how much is going to go into the trust and how much is not going to go into the trust, so that you have an idea of the total dollars you're working with. The other thing is, just as an example, if you were to put that $22.5 million into the trust, you could easily pay from the income and a little bit of the principal each year without taking the money directly in front, as opposed to taking it from what the money earns.
And just to clarify, an irrevocable trust prevents you from taking money from principal. So that money would just be derived through the interest, not through.
Well, my understanding from the last meeting was that the township can't really have an irrevocable trust and that they will have access to the money.
We don't. Yeah.
And I would also suggest that you look at other instruments such as a foundation where you can spend out 3 to 5% a year.
Yeah, we don't know the details of what the trust is going to allow us to do, because we're kind of going into some uncharted waters from a municipal standpoint. So that's why we're engaging the highly trained professionals to help us guide us through that process. Thank you for your comment.
Then I suggest that maybe you delay some of these decisions until you get more information about that stuff.
Okay, thanks for your comment. I appreciate it. Any other public comment regarding the Schuyler tennis courts?
All right, thank you for recognizing me. Christine Sanchez, 1358 Brentwood Road. I think if you're going to fix the tennis courts, you should fix the parking lot, not just put a Band-Aid on it. You don't know the exact cost. I don't know how you could vote on something, not just earmarking 400,000. I would never do a project without having the different bids and the appropriate amount before I think you should take a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for clarification, we're earmarking the money for the project. We're not approving any funds to be spent on the project. Correct, Monica?
Yes, we'd have to bid it out and find out what our bids come in. Then we can accept or reject the bids based on what they come back at.
Off the top of your head, Monica, do you know what the parking lot paving job would be?
I think that would be part of that bigger project where we did the handicap. I think 700 would be able to cover all of that.
Okay.
The handicap, the parking, the paving, the lot.
Okay, thanks. Any other public comment regarding Schuyler Road tennis courts? Anybody on the phone? Okay, hearing none, I call to question all those in favor of the consideration of 400,000 towards the Schuyler Drive tennis courts. Raise your hand and say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 3-2. So we are moving on to the next agenda item, which I believe is going to be consideration to earmark $785,000 to the Park and Rec Capital Reserve account. Monica, if you want to go through these items one by one, I think the board would appreciate a detailed, breakdown of exactly what these are. I think being on the board, for the last 2.5 years, I have a pretty good understanding. I just want to make sure that other board members that have been here longer than I have now have an understanding of what these items are. So if there's any questions, they can clarify them with you tonight. Thanks.
Sure. So The consideration is to earmark $705,000 into or move into the capital reserve account. And I didn't want to just put $705,000 into a commitment to parks and recreation projects without listing
Oh.
the number of projects that need to be done.
Monica, real quick. The agenda says 785,000, not 705. Is there a misprint there?
It says 705 on my agenda that I have open.
The agenda I'm looking at says 7:05 too, Dan.
Okay, I have 785. Thanks. So 705 is what we're going with. Yeah.
705 is what I thought it was, and what I'm seeing right now. So essentially this money, I didn't want to just put an earmark and not say some of the projects that need to get done. Now, this is a minor snippet of projects. It's not like if we were to fix everything in Parks and Recreation in one day, I know that's impossible. This is a snapshot of projects that need to get done that are the most forward facing right now. One of them that I've been talking a lot and very often with the Disability Advisory Board, and I presented to you as part of the transition plan, the ADA transition plan last year, would be this portion of at Memorial Park, and that would be providing shade structures at the Secret Garden, and then the rubberized surface at the Secret Garden, which is also part of the ADA project, is that its 7-year lifespan has some holes. And now we've been talking about some of the problems out at the Secret Garden for some time now. However, we are at the 7-year lifespan. So that is a project that, I'd like to really consider coming up here in the future. Keola lights have been discussed for many years as far as accessibility, not accessibility, ADA accessibility, but being able to increase the longevity of the practice time and game time at the park. We're not asking to light up the whole park, just one field with the heaviest usage age group of 10 to 12 years old. And that is estimated at about $225,000. $225,000. I got that price from Middletown Township, who recently did a project very similar to this project last year. And then also Salem Township also did a project similar to this the previous year. So I kind of got my price from there. Just so you know where the numbers are coming from. These projects here are life cycle replacements. This is something that we haven't done as a township in the past. We have some playgrounds, and really all the playgrounds are beyond their life cycle. Most the playgrounds are beyond their life cycle. Life cycle is about 15 to 20 years on a playground. So Veterans Square, if you go out to Veterans Square, you'll see that the paint is chipping. It's been painted a number of times. The slide is outdated, needs to be repaired and fixed. So it would be an overhaul of that playground to make it a tot lot community type playground. And Heacock, the same thing, aging equipment, some kind of older unsafe equipment, not unsafe to where we would shut it down, but unsafe that there's more modern equipment that is a little bit better. So that's where I'm getting those prices from. And these are things that I've been talking with the park board in previous presentations. And then Veterans Square, also part of that ADA presentation that we gave, $60,000 is actually an increased estimate. I believe it was about $40,000 to do all of them when we estimated last year. Now projects are coming in a little higher. So I wanted to make sure to allow enough money to do the full ADA, all Veterans Square projects. And the reason prioritizing Veteran Squares, and many of our veterans do come there on Veterans Day, and they do require, walkers, wheelchairs, or whatever, and prioritizing that space of parking in that area is really important. And then, of course, we've been discussing for some time pool bathroom improvements. When we went and estimated out those pool bathroom improvements a few years ago, it was about $75,000. We're putting down $100,000 just to give a little bit of room now with all the inflation that we've been experiencing. We did have this project spec'd and costed out, I believe it was 2020 or 2019. So now we're just looking to finish up that project. all of these projects were either mentioned as part of the plan, with the exception of the Pocket Park life cycle replacements, in the Play for All plan, or as part of the 88 transition plan, or as part of, and then the playgrounds were mentioned as part of budget presentations and discussions with the Park and Recreation Board. So I just wanted to bring these to your attention today, and I'd be glad to discuss any of the projects with you. And if you need further clarification, I'd be glad to go into it, whatever we need today. I do hear you, John and Dan, that maybe there wasn't the information in the packet. Glad to provide information to you today further. And if you need even further to really feel comfortable with this, I'd be glad to give you further information in the future.
In the spirit of that, Monica, would it be best then to table this discussion item and then we could have the chance to review the materials and have it brought up at a future agenda?
I would be completely comfortable with what makes you most, like the entire board most comfortable. I just wanted to make sure you understand where we're coming from. The reason that I didn't necessarily put together a presentation today is I felt these were things that we've been discussing for some time and they wouldn't be surprises tonight, but I'm not gathering that from the way people are feeling. So I'd be glad to revet the way that I'm coming with this and represent further in the future.
Awesome. On the advice of staff, I move that we table agenda item 6, consideration to earmark $705,000 to the Parks and Rec Capital Reserve account.
I'll second that. I'm not sure it's necessarily the advice of staff, but I appreciate the sentiment and the openness to do that.
All those in favor of tabling it, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say none. Nay.
Nay.
Motion is pushed back down to 3-2. Yeah, John, it was a real quick, Dan. It's completely inappropriate to use Monica in that fashion, and you should be embarrassed. Go ahead, Dan.
So, I just have some clarifying questions on each of them. I think from my perspective, I'll try to be clear. The 2 Memorial Park bullet points, the shade structures, and then replace the rubberized surface at the Secret Garden. Those to me seem like O&M, operations and maintenance projects that we should be planning for in our annual budgets. Similar, in the same vein as how we plan to maintain our sewer system for 7 years, right? We have a 7-year budget plan so that we can address operations and maintenance projects. That in this case, yeah. So I think what I would like to see, maybe it's a 1-5-10, whatever it is. You'll know what I'm getting at here. Like just coming up with a long-term plan / budget, plan and budget for operations and maintenance of park resources, so that in the future, I'm not saying this is on you by any means, but like as a board, we're planning for the future so we know what we need to spend every year so that we don't get a slug of large fixes that we need to do because maybe they've been either ignored or not planned for, or something, along those lines, something that ounce of prevention, pound of care kind of deal, where we have that ounce of prevention annually so that we don't have these larger spends all at once. That's more of a general comment, but I'm seeing some of these projects falling into that realm. So that to me, those would be more budget projects. Again, I probably use both of those areas, and I appreciate the fixes that are proposed. It's just using sewer funds to do that I'm not sure that's the best use of our sewer funds. On the Keola lights, previously when we talked about the lights, we had and this is since I've been on the board, so it hasn't been that long. The estimate was, I always hear from PAA, was $100,000, maybe as much as 125, but they've always told me 100,000. And then I know things have gone up, and we're earmarking, and materials and all that may have gone up, but this is a significant increase. But at the same time, and this kind of goes back to one of the leagues that showed up at the last meeting. This is $225,000 to benefit. Remember, it's to benefit one private league that is publicly subsidized, right? That when I talk to folks that are involved, and I've asked about these lights because I'm like, okay, do we need the lights to keep these leagues going? I want to know. I like Little League. This isn't Little League. This is Babe Ruth or something. But I like Little League baseball. I grew up doing it. It's sort of my family sport. I understand the benefit. But there's a couple things going on here. When I talk to the folks that run the leagues, I've actually been told we don't think we need the lights because in the summertime when we're actually going to use the lights, you don't turn them on till it's basically bedtime for these kids, and they don't want their kids staying out there till after 9, 10 o'clock at night because they want them in bed. So I'd want to understand that a little bit better. The second point is, again, this is a private league. Some of these leagues have a ton. I don't think PAA does, but I know YMS does. James, we looked at their information. It's all public. There's a lot of money out there in these leagues. I think it's important that we look at not profit sharing, but cost sharing for these capital projects that will only benefit these leagues. When we look at, I believe PFM is doing a study right now for Pennsbury and Morrisville, where they're looking at the potential merger of the two school districts. And the one thing that stuck out to me on some of the stuff that's been published, I don't really have an opinion on the merger, but the one number that stuck out to me, the two numbers, that Pennsbury had 13,000 plus kids in the district. We're down to barely 10,000, and they expect to lose more over the coming years. So specific to this and other things, I'm not seeing a growth in the leagues that requires a ton of extra fields or potentially lights. And I'm going to stick to the lights here. I'm not trying to go off course. So I have concerns. I want to better understand whether the lights are truly necessary. When we talk about the play for all, right? We talked about a needs assessment being done. In reality, I think what we really did was a wants assessment. And there are certain folks that really want lights because they think lights will be good for some reason, and allow for more use. But I'm not sure there's an actual need for those lights for that specific purpose at a cost of, probably nearly $250,000 to the township, where we're using sewer proceeds, where we're talking about infrastructure, versus maybe we look at cost sharing with the league. Maybe we have other ways to fund it with grants, etc. I don't really want to use sewer proceeds for this particular item. If we can do it another way and it makes sense to do it, or I don't think we're going to have a negative impact on neighbors in this case. I'd want to understand that too. Everything we did with the view shed analysis that we did for Snipes with the balloons and all that, to understand what potential impact the lights might have. We want to make sure that we're not having a negative impact on the neighbors with these lights. I think we're probably far enough away that we're not. I just want to know that to get the full picture of what these lights would mean. So this one I don't think I could spend sewer money on. The Pocket Park stuff, the Pocket Park that's a tongue twister. Sorry, the Pocket Park playground replacements at Veterans and Heacock Park. I think that's similar to Memorial Park. Those are O&M updates that we need to do, I think, but I think those need to be in our normal budget process. And I don't think the sewer proceeds are the right way to do that. The Veteran Square ADA upgrades, I'm actually curious about that one, because that one might be one that we do because it's an immediate. I'm not sure that we're completely out of compliance with ADA standards, and with veterans especially, a lot of them are older. Even the younger ones have injuries, so we have ADA is an issue with veterans and access to the parks, and when they're most used is Veterans Day, when those folks will have to access the park. That one I'm interested in. And then the last one on the pool, the pool is one where, we just increased our fees. We told the Yardley Borough residents that they had to pay full price. We got rid of that old agreement with the understanding that the pool was going to pay for the pool and only the pool. It was going to be self-sustaining. We wouldn't need taxpayer money outside of, what they're paying in fees for the pool anymore. So and I understand the bathrooms need improvement. Don't get me wrong. I've been in those bathrooms. But again, we've been told that we're going to be covering those costs by pool fees. So I think if we're going to stick to that, we got to do it and figure out ways to do that. And I think you've been creative in the ways that you've looked to fund things in the past. Improvements to we talked the cafe or whatever, the food, Mr. Cecilia there. We're making improvements. We're spending a lot of money on the pool, on the slides. We're not using the sixth grader, Fred, that you were talking about. We're spending money to improve the pool, but I think we need to use pool proceeds to fund the pool, not taxpayer dollars. So again, I think of these projects, I think most of Memorial Park, the pocket park items should be in our normal budget process. The pool should be funded by the pool. Keola, I think we look for grants and cost sharing with the leagues that use those specific fields. And then the one I think I would be willing to discuss and understand better for an immediate fix would be the ADA upgrades at Veterans Square. That's my personal opinion.
Would you mind if I respond to that, James?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Just to let you know, and just to be completely clear, we need so many repairs and upgrades for Parks and Recreation. I'm not listing them all before you. We're looking at upward of 2.5 of $3 million in upgrades of different facilities and infrastructure. If I asked for everything at once, that's what that would look like if I gave you a full list. I just want to be completely clear. I went through and prioritized more immediate needs, or more things that are more outlying in this list. So if you wanted a full list, that's going to look very, very different. For instance, Makefield Park Playground needs to be completely repaved. That's going to be a huge cost. We have many bike paths that still needs to be repaved. I just wanted to be like, you're mentioning that this should be part of our O&M repair. An O&M repair list would be very, very extensive just for us to catch up. So this is going to put a dent in some of those O&M repairs, so that we can start moving.
But that's what I want to see, though. I want to see that complete, comprehensive list, so that we can look at what the priorities are and have a long-term plan. So some of those items might be immediate first year one needs, or yesterday needs kind of thing, where danger kind of thing. Some of them might be standard planning, 1, 3, 5, 10-year type of approach, but we get all those line items, look at a long-term budgeting plan, because that helps us understand when we do our budgets every year and we look at our millages, right? There are park and rec millages. There are funds coming in from the pool. There are funds coming in from, when we look at fees for the leagues and all that stuff, there are funds that are coming in from the golf course, obviously, that are, many have said that's how they want to spend the golf course money that is no longer going towards bond money, that's going toward, it can be used for park and rec stuff. I think we need a full-blown comprehensive plan that addresses all these, rather than, I mean this respectfully, rather than, sort of cherry picking the top 5 or 6 that maybe this year we do, but we don't, I'd like some insight into those 20 other projects that you want to do, because there might be money we can loosen up to do that, to help you out.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
And I'd be glad to give you all of the things. I have no problem putting those before you. So, with that being said, we're kind of digging ourselves out of a hole here so that we can get to a fine-tuned maintenance plan where we're keeping ahead of things versus, we're coming from behind. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear with that. And I also want to be clear with the leagues, particularly PAA. It's not a big, they don't have a huge cost benefit. They don't have a huge budget. And we do some cross sharing. As a matter of fact, our annual maintenance, we've started a plan where we're doing turface and drainage prep every year. We're rotating through fields. They're paying for half of the project every year. There's some netting they're helping us with. We're working together to get that project done. There's a number of things that we work on together as far as regular plans now.
Yeah.
So I just
And you
don't
have a
want
lot
you
of good
to think
volunteers.
that
Yeah.
we are not cost sharing with us currently, and then they pay their league fees in addition to that. So I do want to make sure that we do work together currently in that way.
No, and that's understood. What I'm getting at is I know some leagues have more money than others. Some leagues have more sway than others, and they amongst the leagues, and they try to dictate who gets what fields, and they say, hey, I'll give you this field and you take that one, and they forget that these are township fields. They're not league fields, right? So last meeting we had YMS here, and what is it, James? What did we see? They had, we asked the question about how much do you pay your people, and I don't know that. Well, you can find it on their 990 forms where what do they have, James? 2019, they 230 something
Yeah,
between three people.
I don't have it. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, it's in my head.
Yeah.
Like one of them was an admin.
$289,000.
Say again, Fred?
$289,000.
That's what they're up to
Other
now.
than the executive director of the league.
So, and that's even higher than what James and I were seeing. So that's amazing. And they have at least they filed their 2019 numbers in 2021. So that's the last one that was public. They had over $1 million in assets, and that's before they bought the indoor facility. So like, we need to understand that better. Like, we have an opportunity to work more closely with the leagues to make things that much better for everyone and more efficient. But I feel like sometimes we're not given the whole picture. And I'm not talking about you, Monica. I don't want you to feel that way. Just like when they come in and ask us for more fields and more lights and more everything, it's like, let's step back, because all these leagues interact. They help us. We help them. This isn't a one-sided thing, but we need to have a better understanding of what they're spending money on, what benefit we get, what we have to spend money on, how the fields interact. It's probably not the right term, but how all this works, so that when we get a request for spend $250,000 on lights, we know that maybe there's a better way to do it without having to spend $250,000 on lights, or having to spend $4.5 million on new fields as they've requested in the past. I think, James, you had an idea a while back about reorganizing MAC or something like, right? Just trying to, some other ideas at MAC that may make this a moot point. I don't know. I think that's something we explore, but I'll get off my soapbox here. But these apologies, but that's what when I see all these, my brain is spinning, because I'm looking at all these Park and Rec things that are interesting that I think we need, but I think there's other creative ways to pay for them. While we also have a whole bunch of other stuff we have to pay for in the township, which is sort of what I've been saying all night. So I'll be quiet now.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. Suzanne, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I was following along. I thought at the top of the meeting, when you addressed this agenda item, you said that these would be earmarks, which means that the next step would be to go out and bid the work, right? So whenever we do these things, sometimes the bids come in under, and sometimes come in over, which means it's a no-go. But really, this portion of the agenda is not only that this is what those projects would look like, but because we've put this money as an earmark, it would allow Monica to apply for grants and loans and matching funds, however we want to express, for these particular projects. Was I following? Is that correct?
That was my intent of it. I think that when I had a discussion with Monica and Kurt about this, is that's the procedural way of doing this in order for us, because it appeases members of the board that would like to have things, RFP'd, and this is exactly gives us the ability to do those things. I mean, it puts us at step one to say, hey, let's put some requests out to see what this is actually going to cost us, and whether or not as a board we want to move forward on these projects. So it's very preliminary. None of these are set in stone, but yeah, that's my intention of it. Yes.
Okay. And then particularly with the work up at Memorial for the inclusive playground. I think I understood what was said, but, and I think it's important for everyone to understand, if anyone's forgotten, right, that in the perfect world, we might be in a different place, but we're not in the perfect world, right? And so we do have a park that has not been maintained, right? That the surface that the children with special needs, because this park is designed specifically for them, the surface that they use to get around is no longer safe, falling apart. I don't know what words we're going to use. In the perfect world, it would never have gotten that way. In the perfect world, we would have had all these items categorized and maintenance would have been happening. But as we know, our town has not been doing maintenance for a long time. So I appreciate the work you did, Monica, to bubble up the top priorities from your position as the head of Park and Recs for the last 5 years, or maybe even longer at this point. I get that there's a lot more that probably needs to be done. And then to Dan's point, there's something that people would want done, but they're not really needs. And we do have to look at those, but I thank you for bringing these things to the surface so that we can move forward on them as we continue to look to repair our overall infrastructure.
Thank you, Supervisor Bundy. Supervisor Weiss, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just, for years, our township has not maintained its infrastructure, Park and Rec included. And we're correcting that. One of the reasons why we sold the sewers is so we can correct that. I just don't want to get so far into the weeds that we lose sight of our strategic ability to make our township a better place. Some of the projects that we're earmarking today have already been approved by the board, such as the lights at KO. Were part of the 2018 budget. Things like, renovating the bathrooms at the pool. I understand Supervisor Grenier's hesitance to use sewer proceeds to do the renovations. However, there's no issue with us when the time comes to have the pool pay us back over a number of years, just like we're having the golf course repay us for all the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we fronted them over the years to pay the debt. These are all good issues to discuss to keep our township our plans correct, and those are definitely discussions that we can have.
But the need is there. We need, these are the priorities of the Park and Rec department. We're earmarking these funds. This gives us the ability to seek grants and to find the exact numbers to do what we need to do. If we have to change our priorities, that's what this board is for. We'll change the priorities, but we need to start somewhere, and I'm willing to do the start with. We have played Play for All to set the general blueprint for the next 10 years. This is this attempt, in my opinion, to begin that journey, and I think I'm very comfortable with how we're moving along at this point.
James, can I make a motion?
Yeah, let me just make sure that. Well, yeah, because I don't think there's a motion on the floor. I think
No, I didn't think there was.
Yeah, are we looking for approval on this entire consideration of the earmark, or?
Well, I'd like to break one out specifically, and then because I think that way we can vote as we would like to. I'd like if we can see how people. I get a second. That's how it goes, right? I'd like to make a motion to earmark $60,000 for ADA upgrade to Veterans Square for the ADA transition plan.
Would that be paid for by bond proceeds or by stimulus money or sewer?
Do we need to determine that as part of the motion?
I seconded it.
Yeah, I'm just asking. So the motion was made by Supervisor Grenier, seconded by Supervisor Blondie. Do we need to determine where the proceeds of that is going to come out, John? I'm not sure if that's something needs to be part of the.
You don't think so? I mean, the
Oh,
solicitor.
no, I'm not sure. I'm not.
Is
Yeah.
the parliamentarian here. Is that necessary, Solicitor Kirk? If you don't
I don't
believe
think
so, then
so.
I'm okay.
I think what you're doing is just saying you're setting aside X amount of money to be used for consideration. When the time comes to make the decision as to whether you're proceeding and how much you're spending, you would then designate where the funds would come.
Yeah, the earmarks are just earmarks. There is no specification where the money comes from. It can come from bond funds, it can come from sewer.
And real quick, Dan, just so I have an idea of what the strategy is here. Are you looking to do individual ones one by one, or you're just looking to do this one in particular?
This is the only motion I was going to
Okay.
make to get a vote on.
Okay.
If you want to do it by major versus minor bullet point, that's totally up to whoever wants to make a motion. I won't try and stop anyone or direct anyone.
So we have a motion. Any other discussion regarding the motion to approve the $60,000 for the ADA upgrades? Any public comment regarding this? Is there anybody on the phone who wanted to make a comment?
I have one caller on the line.
Sure, if you can bring them through. Please state your name and address for the record.
Oh, it's Lisa Tenney, 156 Pinnacle Circle, Yardley, Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Lisa. And your comment?
Yeah, so I'm for public comments. I wanted to report there's a big sinkhole along the bike path along Big Oak Road.
So, hey, Lisa, I don't mean to cut you off, but right now the public comment is regarding the motion on the floor. That's okay. If you want to go back and hold, then we'll bring you back for general public comment.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that's fine.
You can place her back on hold. Thanks. Right now, we're only entertaining public comment regarding the motion made by Supervisor Grenier to approve the $60,000 ADA upgrades.
No further comments.
Thank you. Any public comment in the audience? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
So is there anything else, Monica, that you wanted to add before? Because I'm not really sure how the other supervisors want to do this. So you guys want to do it a one by one?
No, I would make a motion for the remainder of the agenda items under agenda item number 6.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Supervisor Blondie, seconded by Supervisor Weiss to approve the remaining items under the consideration that earmark 705. I don't want to confuse this. Should it all just
$645,000.
Thank you for the quick math. $645,000 for the remaining items on the earmarked proposal. Is there any other supervisor discussion? Supervisor Lewis.
Yeah, so on the Memorial Park additions, when would those have been done absent this earmark? Were they scheduled for next year?
As soon as possible. I would have liked to have done them next year. Yes.
Okay, but you didn't submit them for this year's budget then?
No.
Okay. And the same with Kyola, same deal, right? You didn't submit them for this year's budget?
No.
Okay. And the pool improvements, I know you had scheduled for next year. Was that correct?
That would be only if we had enough revenue in
Yep, yeah.
revenue. But we have to wait and see how that goes.
And then the Pocket Park playground replacements were not in consideration in this year's budget then at all?
We had them for discussion in the next 3 years for Park and Rec presentation.
Okay. So, and the reason I asked, it gets to sort of a process question. Yes, we know many of these items have been outstanding for a while, but they weren't necessarily scheduled immediately. And some were included in prior budget discussions. So what's suggested today is in some measure to accelerate projects that were planned in the future to this year, right? Or sooner then. Is that the intent?
Are you asking me? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I can't tell if you're looking at me or
Yep.
not.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's difficult because it's of looking at the screen. And
Yes,
the
they
other.
would be in the future. Now, actually, I believe maybe last year we tried to replace the rubberized surface and realized that the quotes came in much higher than anticipated. So I believe in the 2021 budget, we did put some money aside to do the rubberized surfaces. But it came back, the quotes much higher than we were estimating, way far above biddable. So we pushed that off and hopes to get it done at the 7-year mark, which would be next year.
Right. So, and we didn't really have sort of budget workshops last year. It was kind of take it all or not. I mean, we didn't have the workshops like we used to have where you could have discussion of this. Now, when you presented all of the information of the list of things, that didn't make it into the budget promotion of future items. So some of them did, some of them didn't, are the ones you've listed, right?
Into the Board of Supervisor presentation?
Yeah, from last year.
No.
No, okay. Yeah, I'm just checking. This is sort of just checking on the information stuff. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Supervisor Lewis. Supervisor Grenier, yes.
Yeah. So Monica, if we're not earmarking, let's for a second say we're not going to earmark all the money for all these projects tonight. Which ones would you put in the 2023 budget when we start working on it in a few months?
Ideally, see, the problem is, there's what I want to put in the budget and what there's really for me to be able to spend within my Parks and Recreation budget. Right. So if I had an unlimited budget, Memorial Park would go in there, Veterans Square would go in there. All of them. I mean, all of them. The only one that might take some consideration would be Keola, but it's not a repair or ADA requirement.
Right. So if you had the same budget you had in 2022 and 2023, how many of these projects would make it into the 2023 budget at the same number?
Yeah, maybe Memorial Park. Maybe.
And is the strategy here to say, Dan, that we could, this could be a combination approach of both earmarking this money for bids and grant money and that sort of thing, and then maybe apply some of the budget money towards it, and then apply some of the other sewer proceeds money towards it?
Like I said, from the big picture, like looking at the overall plan and seeing what we have for available funds across the board, and then seeing what makes it. I think from a high level, probably, James, just looking at it holistically with anything else we want to do, seeing what's a bit like just like a normal budget process, right? Looking what we have available and what we want to spend. The last question I have, Monica, is how are we doing with pool proceeds this year? With I think we've changed a lot of things around, so I'm curious. We're open now, right? So how are we looking year to date, as that does play into the bathroom question?
We will likely break even. I don't think there'll be any excess revenue.
Are we above or below revenue from last year?
Well, last year was an abnormal year.
You're right. So we'd probably be above last year, but
we're below last year. Actually, people rushed to get in thinking that we would close off the amount of membership, so people registered early last year. This year was a cold year. It was a little slower in the registration. I would say it's closer to like 2019 numbers, 2017 numbers. We're in that kind of 80% spot. Last year we're about 90% at this time.
What do you mean? Sorry, what do you mean by 80 versus 90%?
90% budget for membership.
Okay, I wasn't sure if, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we expect more members later, like August members or whatever?
We just expect them to trickle in a little longer
Okay.
than
Just the
Then
heat so
later.
people think about the pool. I got you.
Yes, yes.
Makes sense. Okay.
Any other supervisor comments? Any public comment in the audience? Anybody on the line? Okay, hearing none, I call to question all those in favor to consider earmarking $645,000 for the remaining items in the recreation capital reserve account. Raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 3-2. Thank you so much, Monica.
Thank you.
Before I go to public comment, I just want to circle back on something because I'm getting the general feel that some of my fellow supervisors are interested in coming to some type of consensus as far as how much money we're looking to put towards this irrevocable trust. So if there's an idea out there of what a minimum would be, and that way we can start getting an idea around, kind of building towards, where we're going to be budget wise for some of these other infrastructure projects. If a supervisor wants to speak up or say, hey, I'm interested in putting, I know John, you would mention putting it all in there. However, it doesn't look like, we're moving in that direction. If there's a number out there that somebody would be comfortable saying, hey, at the minimum, I'd like to put X amount of dollars towards this trust. At least that way we can give the residents an idea of where we are from a finance standpoint and going forward in these projects. Sure, Dan.
I'm not sure I'm going to answer your question exactly the way you like it to, because it kind of creates additional questions in my mind. So we have the sewer funds, right? That's a number. We have, I guess, bond funds is a separate number that sort of comes into play a little bit when we look at these discussions. Not necessarily in the trust, but how we fund certain things that we're looking at that may be outside of the typical budget items. I don't know how to define typical per se, but something where we can use a little bit different. And then we have the stimulus money, which is at least a couple $1 million left, I think. So I'd like to have a plan developed for stimulus money so that we can take advantage of that in a timely manner to the extent the greatest extent possible on key projects that we shovel ready, whatever we want to call them, extreme need projects that we want to get done ASAP. And the bond money, we've talked about a few things. So if my thought process is if the stimulus money can cover those immediate need projects, like infrastructure or otherwise, however we can use it, minus the money that has been earmarked for Patterson Farm and a couple other key number one level items, then whatever the difference is after that, I personally would put the balance of that in the trust. I don't know what that number is, but it's a high percentage of items that we don't absolutely have to do now, that we can put the greatest possible amount of money in the trust as we can without doing sort of special want projects versus need projects. That's my thought process. I don't know what that number is because I haven't seen a grander plan, as I've been saying tonight. But my thought is that it's probably a very high percentage in the 85+% number. That's what I don't know that that's exactly true, but that's my feeling based on what I've seen so far.
All right, thanks. Supervisor Weiss, did you want to add something?
Yes, sir. My off-the-cuff handy calculator, we have about all in, give or take about $25 million to spend in any way this board sees fit. We know from the ad hoc committee renovations of the farm, structures, slack house, It's between $3 and $5 million. If you look at yeah, I'm sorry, I keep on play for all. I keep on saying play to play, but that's could be a Freudian slip, but I'll just say play for all is going to cost, we'll say $5 to $10 million. So, and I'm putting a lot of contingency in there, and this is so we're looking at a possibility of $15 million that's going to be spent on remaining infrastructure for the township. And that leaves us about $10 million that we can protect. It could be more, could be a lot more, but unless I hear terrible objection, I would seed this trust with $10 million. And then if we're lucky, we can put a few $1 million more, and over time, hopefully make that even more stronger. But I feel comfortable if we want to put a number in today, that since we've already engaged Obermeyer to do documents, we could seed it with $10 million. I would be comfortable with that. There's a consensus.
Thank you, Dr. Weiss. Any other comments? Supervisor Lewis.
Yeah, respectfully, I'd suggested a couple options. First, I don't know that we can actually effectively spend the amount and the volume of money you're suggesting in such a short period of time effectively. And so to me, that's a bit of an issue. And the way one option you could have selected that perhaps would have mitigated some of the frustration that folks sense is to say, I'll take all of the funds from the sewer sale and I'll put it in a trust. And if I want to use some of that money, the township could borrow against it and pay that fund back at a higher rate of interest than what it would earn right now. And that could, over time, protect the principal and allow you to spend what you need when you need it and restore that back to the fund. That's a reasonable way of doing things. And if you had done that here, the suggestion would be of the whatever 26 million, probably 21 or 22 is sewer related, right? And if you were to borrow against it, then you could pay it back, over 5-year periods, paying interest into the fund. You would never diminish the principal. And in fact, it would help you offset, because you really can't earn a decent rate of return with the limited investments that you can make. Additionally, you could also consider things like, well, could this trust own land, right? So it could address some of other supervisors' concerns. Hey, we want to purchase open space. That's an option. Or we could buy land that could be for developed and hold it, but not necessarily preserve it. Those are all certainly options. But it seems like those choices aren't appealing to some folks, or at least not that you were willing to consider it. You seemed very apprehensive when I suggested it, but in retrospect, if we had done that, or we do that approach, there's no way we would get to borrowing $10 million in a couple of years, because it would take us all this time to execute these projects. And you could be paying back that fund. At the end of this, it's the taxpayers' money. And if you spend it now or you spend it later, they're still paying for it. And they will be paying for every project that we do. The projects, they also pay when we don't do projects, and they lose out money and circumstance. So it's, it would have been easier for you to say, hey, we're going to reserve this money and you can borrow against it, but you have to pay back the principal in 5 years and you have to pay a decent rate of return. And that would have worked reasonably well. So I guess I don't understand, if you're going to waste spend half of it, there's not much left to protect, right? Whereas if you borrow some of that money and say, okay, we're going to be paying back this fund, that money will eventually get back in there and you'll have a larger fund over time. So, with that, I would prefer to, I think Supervisor Grenier said he was 85% of the 26 million you were at, right?
25, I think is what he said.
So I'd be a little higher than that, right? But I'm sure there's a number we can figure on that's reasonable. But this is all stuff that we probably should have had before we started to open the floodgates and tell everybody we're going to have all these projects.
Well, I think, and just to be correct,
I think we need a little bit of clarity around what your vision of it is. So your vision of it is basically becoming a bank where we borrow money from ourselves, correct?
And pay ourselves back at a higher rate of return than we could get on the investments.
How do we pay our debt back at a higher rate of return based on our current tax structure? So are you suggesting increasing taxes and EIT? How exactly would we pay ourselves back?
First off, as you know, Chair McCartney, no one has more vociferously opposed an EIT in Lower Makefield than me. Boy, I have done the work to make sure that we never ever have an earned income tax in Lower Makefield. I have been brutally aggressive on that, which is probably why the township manager doesn't like me too much and doesn't like my questions. But there's no reason why we can't borrow against ourselves and pay ourselves back, right? When you have a 401k, you have the option to borrow against it and pay yourself that money back. You have a limited period to do that, and you have to pay yourself a reasonable rate of return.
But how do we generate the revenue to pay ourselves back?
Well,
I don't
first
think
off,
it's an accurate statement in terms of how township municipality funding works.
pardon me?
I don't think this plan that you're putting forth is actually something we could actually do.
Why not?
Go ahead, Fred. I know we've talked about this before. But
We've talked about this ad nauseum.
Right.
And you have to have some kind of income to pay us back. Municipalities, if they wanted to go into debt, which we used to, we would issue bonds. And taxpayers would pay that debt back over time. The concept of using a fund of money and borrowing against himself, sort of like a secured loan that an individual would use, or getting a home equity loan, is based upon not what you have as asset, but what your income would be. Any loan is based on current revenue. For us to pay any loan back, to basically going into debt again, we would have to raise their debt millage or increase park and rec millage. Those are the only two ways that we legally can raise the revenues to pay a debt back.
Yeah. So
there's no discussion on this.
Well, yeah,
we cannot borrow against ourselves without the income to generated to pay us back.
And what better way to do that?
That's like we need oxygen to breathe.
Right.
So let me finish my thought, and then you can ask me a question.
I still have the floor, but go ahead.
So and plus the fact we spent 3 years to sell sewers to get out of debt. So why would we want to go back into debt? The concept is to pay for those projects that are sorely needed in the township, that is open to discussion, and that's open. That's on the table. But to take what we've already done and then go back into debt, I mean, that's, to me, and I'm being very respectful when I say that, is absurd. Totally absurd. Because it would mean raising taxes. It would mean going into debt again. And then it would still not, accomplish anything other than what we're doing now without doing any of that stuff. Why do these mental gymnastics when we can pay for what we have it? If you say $10 million is not enough, then okay, we'll narrow what we said we were going to spend and spend less, and maybe Patterson Farm doesn't need to be restored.
So
okay, that takes $3 million off the table. Maybe we reconsider Play for All and not worry about it. Let the kids play in mud, and that's okay. But if those are things that the board can decide on. But to say that and maybe because this is my background, the fact that you're asking us to borrow against ourselves without finding the income streams to do that, we don't have that money tree. I said this in 2019. I said it in 2020.
You just
Pardon me.
can't pick the money out of the money tree
Okay,
and pay things that we don't
interrupted
have.
me
You
for
gotta
quite a
have
long
something to
time.
pay with.
Supervisor Weiss, I've given you a reasonable time to.
I want to
ask
tell you the
questions, but
truth, I'll take as much time as I want, because when the
I have
shoe
the
was on
floor.
the other foot, you were more than happy to remind me that I was taking into your time.
But this
When
is
I
actually my time.
quote, yield the floor, then you may do
All
so.
right. So
Please,
let me explain.
when
here.
I finish my statement, if you want to, contradict me, disagree with me, that's fine. But I will say it one more time. We cannot borrow against ourselves unless we generate more income to pay that debt. There is no other income stream. So if we want to restore the farm buildings, fix the slack house, fix our field situation, generate the asset, the income to improve that, then we're going to have to either use the sewer proceeds or raise the taxes or just not do it and let things disintegrate again.
Okay. So
those are the
thank you, but I'm reclaiming my time, which I was generous enough to yield you. I don't know, what, 10 minutes?
I don't know. You stopped, and then I was recognized.
It's now
by
my
the chair.
time. I'm reclaiming my
So,
time.
Mr. Lewis,
So pardon me,
Mr. McCartney,
this is my time. It's my
no,
time.
Mr. McCartney
It's
has
my
that
time.
privilege.
So please allow me to finish.
Recognize whatever supervisor he wishes.
So
I am finished, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
now that you're finished.
You may do what
So
you
let
wish.
me explain here. First, we're not going back into debt. We're borrowing against ourselves.
That's going into debt, no matter how you look at it.
Mr. Chairman, could you admonish
Supervisor
Weiss for interrupting repeatedly?
I respect the banter back and forth. I wish that it's respectful and that we take time to listen.
Chair McCartney, do you think that's respectful?
I believe that the problem with No,
that wasn't my question. Do you believe that Supervisor Weiss's interruption
I'm
and
not here to
hectoring me is
determine-
respectful?
I'm not here to determine respect. I'm here to.
Okay, so but
basically
this isn't the
manage-
first time, Chair Blendy, or pardon me, Chair McCartney, right? It's not the first time with
Okay.
Supervisor Weiss.
That's okay. Finish your point. So you're saying that it's okay for us to borrow money against ourselves and we won't have to raise taxes to pay it back.
For those that are hearing me out here, we're not going into additional debt. We're borrowing against ourselves.
How are we
right?
repaying it?
Now, pardon me? Did you interrupt me again?
Yes, because I
Okay.
want to make sure that it's clear. How do we
Zip it.
repaying it?
Zip it's my time.
How are we repaying
Zip it.
Done.
So
How are
listen,
we repaying it?
this is a common practice here. Let me explain this one more time. We can borrow against it. We can pay ourselves back.
How?
Very simply, we
By
have
raising
debt
taxes.
service. You going to interrupt me all the time?
Yeah, because I want to make sure that you're not giving
Okay.
this information out. So your point's done. We're moving on. Are there any other?
No.
supervisor
You
comments
kept
on this?
interrupting me.
That's
Now,
okay.
my point is
We're
not
done.
done. We can
Yes, your
pay
point
it
is
back. Pardon me. We have debt service and millage. You do this all the time. It's frustrating, very frustrating. It's not professional.
That's okay. We're moving along. Is there any?
No, we're
other
not.
supervisor
I still have the
comments regarding
time.
this?
You haven't. Hey,
Are there
pardon.
any other?
If you're going to
supervisor
interrupt me,
comments regarding
see,
this?
here's what's going to happen. I'm going to try and get a sentence out where it's very simple. You can pay yourself back in the same way like a 401k, direct payroll deduction. How would that work here? We would dedicate a millage to pay ourselves back. Now, they're going to concede, hold on, they're going to concede that that's a tax increase, right? No, it's you paying yourself back. What they're doing when they spend the money is they're spending your money. The question is when you're going to pay that. You're going to pay that eventually when the principal is declined, and now we need additional funding sources. And the next second township manager from now says, we have to have an earned income tax because the principal value of this amount of money that we thought was going to be so valuable is not valuable anymore, especially in a high inflation rate environment. You don't get away from this. You're going to pay for this eventually. First off, you're all getting crushed. This is painful. You're all going to get crushed on sewer rates. Crushed, which far dwarfs the amount you pay in municipal taxes, far dwarfs. And instead of saying, hey, wait a second, maybe if I pay $50 more a year, I can get these things in a reasonable time frame. I don't have a problem with raising your taxes to pay for stuff that's necessary. By the way, the rest of the board doesn't have a problem with borrowing money. They just did that to increase the amount of roads that we would pave this year. And you know why I voted for it, even though I didn't like the process? Because I knew we were going through an inflationary period and I want to get more roads done at a lower cost. So I swallowed my preference for better process to do what I thought was the right thing. So that's my frustration with this. Again, the township manager's not here to present his case for how the funds should be spent. He's off the meeting. And as it relates to asking him questions, there are times when I've asked him questions, he said, well, you need 3 votes to get an answer to that one. I had a whole series of reasonable questions about the sewer sale, and he would not answer them. Would not answer them. How am I supposed to make a $50 million decision when I can't get answers to questions? Today, I was asked to make a $400,000 decision, right, with 1 line. And I'm supposed to remember all this stuff from 2018, and we know it's the most important priority. Well, wait a second. We have other priorities. If tomorrow a stormwater inlet's a problem, that's a lot of money. Do I want to spend this when that could be more important down the road? And you tell me, well, you say, hey, you should go in and talk to the township manager. I do. The door is closed or he's in upper Dublin. What am I supposed to do? Right? These are frustrating things. And the thing about this is every week, this is ponderous. And I'm trying to do the right thing. And I'm trying to be as polite as I can be. But at some point, if your only thing is, hey, I'm going to browbeat you, shout you down, and say you're not smart or you don't know what you're talking about, but then don't have the facts to back it up or suggest that other things, that's not a constructive way to do business. So I know I'm going to lose this vote. I know I'm going to lose it, which is, knew that going in, right? I knew I was going to lose the vote on Obermeyer too. Holy cow, 2.5 times for the rate on that. I'm still.
Mr. Lewis,
that's
if you were so concerned about money, maybe you wouldn't have cooperated with litigants and cost this township over $100,000 in a lawsuit a couple of years ago. So please stop.
Actually, Fred,
actually, was probably more.
Well,
So,
pardon me,
so
Fred.
let me just.
Well, you're interrupting. This is still my
I don't
time.
like to do
Still
this.
my
I find this
time.
to be
Still my time.
terrible. No, you finished it. So now
I'm not making ad hominem
Mr.
attacks
Chair,
at you personally.
May I be recognized?
No, he's
need to be
hey, listen,
recognized.
James, if you're going to recognize him, have another 12-minute spree where he talks
I
nasty
want to
stuff
take all
about me.
night if we have.
Go
to,
ahead. Just make a limit on the time.
Your
okay?
misinformation,
Because I got other business. I
Mr.
got work to
Lewis,
do.
is bad for the township. It's bad for the board. It's bad for the township. You keep
All right.
on you keep
don't like
on
the policy, that's fine.
relitigating nonsense about these terrible fees that are going to increase with the sewers. That is ludicrous in this township's position because we already had to spend from our DEP mandated 537 plan. We had to raise rates back in, what was it, 3 years ago now? 4 years ago? I forget. I don't know, 50% over a 2-year period, 37 and 14. That's 51%. Our indicative rates that were given by every company that bid for us gave us a rate between 20 to 2030 that was, I don't know, 20% to 30% less than had we not sold the sewers. So when you tell the residents of this township that we're going to get socked in rates, you're giving misinformation, Mr. Lewis. You should be ashamed of yourself. We have not only got ourselves out of debt, we lowered taxes, we paved more roads, we now have the ability to generate a profit with the golf course. We have ability to do all these things that we've already accomplished. And just because you don't become the executive director of some expanded authority one day and control patronage jobs, you want to take it out on this board?
Really, guys, come on. Let's keep this professional. There's no need to be throwing these things at each other.
Yeah.
This is nonsense. So I'll tell you what. You stop talking nonsense, and maybe I'll stop talking nonsense. I've had enough of this. Everything on the record has been defensed. Everything. You keep on honoring this nonsense. You talk about how much it costs to do something. Well, for 10 years, 2 of which when you were on the board, before we all got on the board, you let some auto body shop cause a dangerous situation at the pool. You allowed $11,000 patch jobs for the 2 years that you were on the board by yourself that were totally worthless. And that goes back to, I don't know, 20 years. So when you talk about being a steward of our township, your record doesn't show too much. And I'm at the point now where for the remainder of my term, I'm going to make it sure that people understand when you say such nonsense. I'm going to be right there to say no, that's not true. On the rare chance that you might say something that's appropriate and truthful, I'll agree with you. But for all those other times, I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis, that's enough. There's nothing that has been that you have said that has made anything in truth. And for you to raise that misinformation to the public who has no basis to understand what's truth now, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. You've shown for the last at least 2 years, you've shown no regard for any other member but yourself on this board. I'm really ashamed of that. How dare you? How dare you continue to give misinformation? I am sorry, Mr. Chair, but it had to be said.
No, I listen, at this point,
it had to be said.
At this point, I am closing the door on the discussion regarding what everybody's consensus was. Dan, I heard you. You're around 85%. Fred, you're right around the 10 million. The only person I didn't hear from was Suzanne. I don't know if you wanted to chime in with a number that felt like was in the ballpark for you.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I mean, I'd rather not talk about some of the things that we've talked about because I don't want to, I'll say jinx them, but impair them. It's at least 10 million that needs to be safeguarded. And then, there are things that I've said quite clearly over and over again, and I'm not backing away from any of them. So
thank you.
It's at least 10 million.
And to members of the audience, I do hear some outbursts during the meeting. I know that I'm not there. I would ask that you respect the board without no outbursts. If you do have a public comment, you will have the ability to come up and speak. So with that being said, I think we are at public comment, agenda item number 7. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to come and speak, now is your time. Remember to please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Elizabeth Luciano. I live on Ash Lane. I'm going to ask you to consider spending a little bit of money, emphasis on a little bit. Like Mr. Gamble, I care about environmental protection. I'd like to suggest that the Snipes Tract be evaluated by an outside environmental group. Organizations such as the Audubon Society, the Natural Lands Trust, and the Heritage Conservancy will evaluate and inventory lands with an eye toward the species present. If there are wetlands, aquatic and amphibious creatures will be counted. An inventory of the Snipes Tract is an environmental necessity. In the grand scheme of things, the cost of such a service would be relatively minimal. Also, in agreement with my neighbor, Mr. Cawley, I asked the BOS to conduct a trustworthy needs analysis that can provide meaningful information. Some preliminary research has suggested that a verifiable, rigorous needs assessment would cost in the neighborhood of $15,000, that's 15, to $20,000. While that's not an insignificant amount of money, or money that most of us have sitting in our wallets, it is small when we are considering municipal development. I suggest it's smart to spend a little money to be certain you have the right information before spending the big money, the $5 to $10 million on expansions and facilities that the township may not genuinely need. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Anybody else public comment in the audience?
Yes, again, Charles Quattrone, 2025 Quarry Road. I'd like to refer back to the trust for a minute. I think we're paying $395 an hour for legal fees. We should ask them what we can and can't do. In fact, even if whether we want to do it or not is a different question. But if we want to borrow, if we can borrow against it, or if we can't borrow against it. The second thing is, are there other instruments? Would a foundation be better? Is there some way possible, despite some township restrictions on how you can invest the fund, we can get into a balanced portfolio to have the funds grow? I know that's not possible with operating funds, but these are not necessarily operating funds. These are proceeds from an asset sale. So I would suggest you consider that. The other thing is, when you do set this up, you need to have some investment guidelines. So you need to think about that as well. And there should be a group that is responsible for the investment of those funds. So, and I would urge you, before you earmark any more money, you've already earmarked 6.2% of the $22.5 million. So before you earmark any more money, you determine what's going to go into the trust. And one of the ways to determine what goes into the trust is to figure out what you can do with that trust. If you are able to have some mechanism for that trust to grow, you may be able to earmark less. If you don't, you maybe have to earmark more. So these are a lot of questions that need to be answered before you start earmarking any more money in regard to the sewer proceeds. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I think the consensus of the board is to make sure that when we do engage the individuals regarding what the rules of the trust are going to be, most of those questions, all of those questions, and maybe even more are going to be answered at that time. So thanks. Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Christine Sanchez, Brentwood Road. I would like to see Snipes a nature preserve to keep the trees and wildlife habitat to protect our planet for all our future generations.
Thank you very much for your comment. Any other public comment?
Beth Cawley, James Court, Yardley.
Thank you.
I wanted to mention that I believe that the township has great recreation facilities presently. They're completely adequate for any child. It's good for kids to play in the dirt anyhow. That's a healthy thing to get dirty. You don't want them too sanitary. So contrary to what Mr. Weiss said, I think it's adequate now. And sometimes it's better. Less is better than more. No need to spend between 5 and 10 million. You'd think you were talking about $5 to $10. 5 to 10 million on Play for All is really an unnecessary expenditure. I would rather see that $10 million earmarked in an open space reserve account. In the survey, which resulted in Play for All, the number one request was for open space, not the development of space. If open space such as a farm becomes available, there would be money in reserve to purchase it. I did not see a demographic study in the Play for All plan, and as someone mentioned, the number of students at Pennsbury has almost declined by 3,000. But I believe that the number of children participating in baseball is also declining and flat in some sports. So there may also be a decline in paying participation, which needs to be looked at. The trend seems to be that less and less children are participating in some of the sports referenced in the study. So why don't we make good use of the present resources we have and not add to it and put more money in the fund that the attorneys are going to put in the trust fund? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment?
We have one public comment online.
Yeah, I believe that Lisa was still on the line.
Bringing Lisa in now.
Thank you. Hi, Lisa. Can you state your name and address for the record, please? You're on mute. You're still on mute. Can you unmute your line? Does anybody remember what the unmute your line is? Pound
*6, I thought, but she just unmuted.
Oh, there she is. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, Lisa Tenney, 1656 Pinnacle Circle, Yardley. So in a perfect world, I would not need to even call in, but I am. So I want to let you know there's a big sinkhole on the walking bike path I believe it's township-owned land along Big Oak Road between the intersection of Stony Hill and Esther Lane. It's been there for probably 9 months with the cone. I just want to let you know about that because unfortunately I haven't been able to get into the office there. And also, I agree with the Snipes Farm. Leave it alone, leave it to the environment, leave it for everybody.
Thank you
Period.
so much. Thanks for your comment, Lisa. Is there any other public?
I think that sinkhole is on PennDOT right away, or is it a different sinkhole?
I think the one on Big Oak Road, I'm not 100% sure. I can get a message out to Kurt now and find out. Is there any other public comment on the line?
No further public comment online.
All right, that none being heard, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Good night, everyone.
Have a great evening.